across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there and a good evening to you. It is Petrie here with you through until 1 o'clock as usual, and coming up at midnight it's your chance to talk back, and I hope that you do. We're going to be talking prisons, and we're going to be talking about Nigel Farage's plans to open up Nightingale prisons and also to deport foreign prisoners, trying to free up some places so we don't have to have an early release scheme. He's saying that actually some people will not get an early release at all, so they'll serve their full sentences, and I just wonder how that would work out. But also the idea of sending prisoners overseas to places like Kosovo or to El Salvador. Do you support that? Do you think that that would be the right thing to do? Although he didn't talk about those prisoners who are on remand and what would happen to them. Many foreign prisoners on remand at the moment, so therefore not having been to court yet, not having been found guilty or innocent of a crime. So lots to talk about there. And also Nigel Farage said in his speech today, as I was listening to it, he said that some people cannot be rehabilitated, that we have to accept that there are people, there are crimes which people carry out, that they cannot be considered ever to be possible for rehabilitation. I wonder if you agree with that. Should we just write some people off? Are there those people that you think actually they will never, that sort of crime, you're never ever going to be rehabilitated? Some might say rapists or paedophiles. So I'd love to hear from you on that. So we're going to be talking prisons from midnight onwards, so do give me a call. 0344 499 1000. Those calls are charged at the national rate, but we do call you back. And you can text as well. Text the word talk and your message to 87222. Right, for the rest of the programme, let me tell you what else is coming up. As Peter said, fabulous paper reviewer today. Amy Fisher is going to be here in the studio, former Director of Comms for the Conservative Party. That's at 11 o'clock. Adam French will be joining us to talk about subscriptions and how we often get caught out with paying subscriptions that we don't want to pay anymore. And they are difficult to get out of once you've found yourself embroiled in them. So we'll be talking about that. We're going to be talking about Farage's plans to end prison overcrowding, and if in the real world that could possibly work out. He says by leaving the ECHR, then there won't be any legal claim by people under human rights laws to not be sent to places like El Salvador. But I can't help thinking that that may be wishful thinking on behalf of Mr. Farage and the Reform Party. So all of that is coming up, and so much of it I would love your views and opinions on as well. So do get in touch. But first, let's address what's going on globally in the Middle East. Tensions across the Middle East intensified as Iran-backed Houthi rebels launched fresh attacks on Yemen's Red Sea port of Mocha and Saudi oil infrastructure in the Persian Gulf. The Tehran demanded war damage compensation and an end to the US naval blockade as conditions to reopen the vital Straits of Hormuz. Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu rejected US President Donald Trump's proposed 15-point Gaza peace plan, declaring that no military withdrawal until Hamas is completely disarmed. The White House is sort of going a bit meh on Netanyahu, saying that he's actually just saying that because he's got an election coming up, but we expect him to do what we want him to do. But will he? Joining me now to discuss all of this is Adam Lucente, who is a correspondent for Al Monitor, an independent Middle East news source. Adam, good to see you again.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Let's start with what's happening with the Houthi rebels, because there is a suggestion that that pinch point in the Al Mindab Strait could get even more dramatic for the rest of the world economically.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, the latest there is that the Houthis said that they hit Saudi weapons and Saudi forces in the Red Sea city of Muha, which is, a strategic area. And, this all stems from, a bombing last month where, the Yemeni government and the Saudi-led coalition were trying to prevent an Iranian plane from landing amid increased Iranian support to the Houthis amid the conflict in the Strait of Hormuz. Now, the Houthis have been more active with targeting Saudi Arabia, then vice versa. And as of now, Saudi Arabia is signaling that there is going to be some sort of response. They have the defense pact they made with Turkey and Pakistan, and they also announced a coalition for Red Sea security. As of now, the shipping in the Red Sea is a bit better than Hormuz. The latest data shows that around 40 a day are being able to traverse the Bab el-Mandeb compared to just a handful of ships in the Strait of Hormuz. So that's basically where we're at with Yemen.
The Houthis, though, the Iranians have hinted or suggested that the Houthis are ready and willing and armed to cause more trouble. Are they just waiting for the word from Iran to completely shut down the Bab el-Mandeb pinch point, therefore the Suez Canal, therefore another exit point for oil coming into Western economies?
It could be that, but the Houthis have shown a bit that they will sometimes do their own thing. I mean, earlier on in this war, they weren't very active when it really could have helped Iran, when Iran was really getting pummeled by the U.S. and Israel. Now we've had a variety of different ceasefires and MOUs that have fallen apart, but still there's relative calm when it comes to strikes within Iran. So the Houthis do not always act exactly when Iran acts or exactly when other proxies like Hezbollah act, but they could do more in the Red Sea. And like I said, shipping there is still pretty much intact. But, they have hit Saudi tankers, and they could definitely do more of that. Of course, they have to weigh a potential response from the U.S. to those actions.
Talking of straits, let's turn now to the Strait of Hormuz. And the Iranians are becoming more and more bold about their statements about the Strait of Hormuz. I mean, they've always declared that they want control of it. They've always declared, but they're now saying it will never return to post-war freedoms. It will never return to just being an open sea for ships to traverse in and out. They're saying that they're close to a deal with Oman and that the deal will be done with Oman without the US.
Yeah, the interesting thing here is that Iran has said that the deal with Oman is separate from opening the Strait of Hormuz. They're talking about different routes. Iran is signaling that they want, a northern route going into the Strait of Hormuz near the Iranian territory, then going out a southern route near Oman. But they said that the opening of it, regardless, independent of that, has to be met after the U.S. meets Iran's demands. And these demands, like you alluded to, ending the war on Iran and its allies, no more U.S. blockade, no more sanctions, and war compensation. The interesting thing is these are things that were being negotiated between Iran and the Trump administration. Now Iran has shifted their cards and saying that, no, these are prerequisites to opening the Strait of Hormuz, and then we can talk about everything else.
They're seeming to read the room, aren't they, very well, Iran, in terms of the pressure that Donald Trump is under at home politically, with the midterms becoming increasingly close. The suggestions that Donald Trump wants to just give them everything they want and get out of there. And the Iranians appear to really be understanding and taking Donald Trump's temperature very, very well.
Yeah, that is definitely a consideration. I mean, the fuel prices are still up here. They're not as up as I thought they would be, to be honest with you.
No, I thought they'd go higher than $80. Yeah. I must admit.
It's not that bad, but it's higher than it was, before this war. And obviously the midterms are coming up. Some people think Trump is just buying time and then will do a larger action after the midterms. But even there, the exact military options for the U.S. and Israel are somewhat limited when it comes to Iran, at least with the level of commitment the U.S. is currently willing to commit.
Yeah, I mean, and there's also more than rumours coming out of the US that the weapon stocks are down. That actually that was the real reason that Donald Trump halted the last big attack that he was going to carry out, was the fact that their long-range missiles, the ATACMS and the Patriots and things like that, they're down to their bones on that.
Yeah, that is a consideration, and obviously, Taiwan is something the U.S. is paying attention to. Whether China will make a move there in the next few years, that could really
China's
exacerbate.
Counting the missiles, aren't they? They're ticking them off as they're fired, so they'll know exactly where the U.S. is on them.
It's possible. And, you know, in general, we've just seen kind of a widening of this conflict. Now, Yemen is heating up, as we discussed,
Yeah.
and then there was a Ukrainian strike on a Iranian ship near them. So these are all things for the U.S. to consider in weighing any escalation, further escalation against Iran.
Is there any way out of this for Donald Trump that doesn't look like a complete mess or surrender? Because he keeps going on about the deal that Obama had on nuclear weapons, and that is increasingly looking like it was the golden deal, that it was the best deal that could possibly be got. And Trump's deal is going to be way, way worse.
I think the things where Trump could potentially recover some ground here is with the wider region. I mean, you could see Hezbollah, you know, really kind of falter there with the further implementation of the Israel-Lebanon deal. There's the Houthis who are doing, you know, are holding on to their territory, but, you know, Saudi Arabia is signaling that, you know, they are not going to take this for much longer. And also the Iranian economy, which President Trump has talked about. I mean, that is true. The inflation is still very bad. The currency is still bad. These are the things that precipitated the mass protests we saw in late December and early January. That's always a possibility of happening in Iran, especially as things calm down. So things could change on the ground in the region within Iran. But as of now, Iran seems intent on exercising its leverage in the Strait of Hormuz.
Let's turn now to Israel and Gaza. This the Board of Peace deal that was a 15-point plan. Donald Trump was putting out on Truth Social that the Israelis, had agreed to it, and it was all looking hunky-dory until Benjamin Netanyahu said, "No, we're not doing this."
Yeah, I mean, it is important to look at this through the Israeli and also the Palestinian political lens. I mean, Netanyahu's between a rock and a hard place because coalition members of his do not want this deal. And he promised a full defeat of Hamas. And this deal doesn't exactly do that. At the same time, you know, it's all ahead of the elections and there is the U.S. pressure on him. So he could be buying time. We need to see what happens. But there's also, you know, obstacles to this being implemented within Gaza. Hamas has said that they will agree to this, that they will turn over authority to the National Committee for the Administration of Gaza, a Palestinian-led committee. They said they will turn over their weapons to them. But, you know, they've also said that resistance is still their ultimate goal. And there's not really any other viable authority in Gaza as of now. So it does kind of remain to be seen. But, you know, you could see Israel pull back somewhat, perhaps discreetly, from parts of Gaza as they see this being implemented. A Board of Peace official recently said that, you know, all of this will be contingent on Hamas meeting its obligations. So there's really a lot that could happen.
The relationship, though, between Israel and the US has seemed a little less close. They were in lockstep at the beginning of this war. It was 160 days ago, and increasingly look as though they're not in lockstep anymore. Is there anything we can read into that?
It does seem that way, but Netanyahu was recently in the U.S., and it wasn't clear exactly how much they did discuss Gaza. I think, you know, the Israeli situation will have a clearer idea in October. It's only a few months away. If Netanyahu wins this election, then there will be certainly an effort on his part, but probably on Trump's part as well, to kind of repair things and see where things stand. And then around that same time, the Trump administration will not have the pressure of its own midterm election. So we'll see where things stand. But as of now, on Iran and Gaza, and also on Syria and Lebanon to a lesser extent, there continues to be daylight and friction between the two camps.
I mean, again, politically across the world, we may see a very weakened Donald Trump after the midterms. There could certainly be a shift to the Democrats. They really could. It looks like a lot of states now, red states are turning blue or purple, maybe a mixture of the two rather than totally blue. But Donald Trump could be running out of time, politically speaking, to get anything done. Is there a sense around the world that a lot of people are also thinking, well, if we back this horse, it may be weakened become November?
It's possible. I mean, the thing with the U.S. elections is we've seen in some cases farther left candidates win the Democratic primaries, not in all cases, but in some, like in Michigan, in Missouri, there were a bit more moderate people who defeated far left challengers. So that could actually benefit the Republicans, depending on how things go in the midterm elections, where people might vote might vote Republican to stave off these kind of like far left challengers. So it remains to be seen there. And also, we don't know who Trump's successor will be, the Republican nominee. It seems that it will be Vice President J.D. Vance. He's leading the betting markets, but there continues to be reports that Trump may want Rubio on the ticket or perhaps atop the ticket and sidestep Vance. If Vance is the nominee, he will himself want to, message more of a pro-peace, pro-deal message to, the world, but Rubio could be more of a traditional foreign policy. So that's something that Trump needs to consider as well.
Well, Trump might be on the ticket himself.
I don't expect that.
You don't buy the Trump 28 hat, then you don't.
I don't.
You don't. You think he's just poking fun at us. When it comes to Netanyahu, he is determined to stay in power for personal reasons as well, right? He doesn't want to end up in court and in jail. So, what are we going to see from him? Do you think getting closer to those elections? I don't think there's anything more scary than a man who's scared of losing his power.
Well, I suspect that you'll see more of this kind of balancing act, needing to signal, needing to keep communication open with the U.S. and not do anything to openly defy or embarrass the Trump administration, because that would be bad for him. But at the same time, trying to stall, trying to not implement some of these plans that the U.S. is pushing, at least openly, because he doesn't want to, upset the kind of far-right people in his coalition. That seems to be who he is campaigning to, because he has lots of challengers from the center. There's a former commander, Eisencoat, who is coming from the center. Then there's the Bennett-Lapid ticket, which Bennett has a right-wing background, but Lapid below the ticket, or farther down the ticket, more of a moderate. So that's where he's really being threatened from. So he is trying to, appease the right in a sense. Then, of course, there's the issue of conscription in Israel, which is a hot-button issue. So I don't expect to see anything major. I think he will continue this balancing act. But, we could see a very different Israeli administration, not so much with domestic policy, but, with the relationship with the U.S., how they interact, how they listen to the Trump administration's demands. We could see something different there.
So is Trump just going to stay patient with Netanyahu going through this balancing act and trying to appear tough in Israel, but trying to placate Trump? I can't imagine that Trump's going to be very patient with Netanyahu being so publicly saying we're not bending the knee to our allies.
I think that's definitely something to consider, but let's also think that, Gaza is not the biggest priority for the Trump administration right now. He's able to announce this, and then, he knows that the deal will take some time to be implemented. He can still take credit saying, this happened, Hamas agreed to disarm, they agreed to let this Palestinian committee come in, knowing that this will take weeks, even months, or even longer to be implemented. I mean, the last Gaza ceasefire took a long time just to negotiate. And then it's held in some ways, it hasn't held in other ways. But, more focus remains on Iran as of now than Gaza. But at the same time, in the news cycle, I'm sure you've noticed as well, there's a bit of Iran fatigue. You could see Gaza capture more headlines. But the conflict has, died down there, though, to an extent.
Interesting, though, that Donald Trump called up a friend at Axios and for an interview and said that he's low-keying it. It seems Donald Trump is saying, well, we're going to just be low-key about Iran. What do you take from that? What does that mean to you?
Yeah, that's where he mentioned, the Iranian economy really struggling, the inflation, the devaluation of their currency. That's what he meant there. And, we're seeing, the effects of the blockade. It is hitting Iran.
Just stand back and wait and see what happens, basically.
For now, yes.
For now.
Yeah, because, the military, like we talked about, the military options, there aren't many of them at present. It hasn't really worked. You could see, the U.S. do something more, which would involve a lot more troops seizing islands in the Gulf, for example. Or you can do this wait and see how the Iranian economy takes its toll, because they are hurting. I mean, they're flexing a lot in the Strait of Hormuz. They've survived this war, which is a big propaganda victory for them, if anything. But, the Iranian economy is definitely in danger.
But this is where Trump, though, sometimes just totally misreads the room or doesn't understand his enemy, because the Iranians have already said they don't care. You know, we know struggle. We're prepared. They've spoken on behalf of the people of Iran and said people are prepared to die for this cause. It's not like America, where people are moaning about the price of gas at the petrol pumps, right? This is a people that don't have a voice. This is a people that don't have a say, and the Iranian leadership literally don't care if they're all dying in the streets, because they're dying as martyrs for the cause. Trump just appears to not have understood that very well.
Yeah, I mean, I see it kind of both ways. I mean, there is a rallying around the flag effect happening in Iran. I mean, people I've spoken to say their parents who were kind of anti-regime after these bombings were like, no, why are they bombing us? Kind of, you know, rallying behind the supreme leader who was killed. But at the same time, you know, these protesters didn't go away. I mean, thousands were killed, more being executed, more on death row right now. The UN just put out a report on that. But people remember what happened. And every few years, there are these major protests. And there's even smaller ones, or regional ones, rather, even more often than that. And, you know, since like 2020, the late 2010s, there have been like water protests in the southeast, for example. So Iran is always not so far away from seeing a major demonstration that could then turn national before they're able to clamp down on the internet. So, you know, we've seen in Syria, we've seen in other places, regimes can fall, but as of now, Iran seems strong.
We appear to be getting some news as well about the new Ayatollah, that we're going to see him out amongst the people soon. Do you expect to see that?
I'll believe it when I see it. I mean, even the president has said, oh, communication's improving with him. And then a few days ago, he said, well, communication's difficult. The Ayatollah today did replace several military commanders. Now, some of them were already acting as, you know, heads of their positions, but he kind of formalized this post-war, you know, the original wave that people that were killed in February and March. He kind of formalized some of those new roles. He replaced his the head of his main security body recently. So someone is, you know, making these decisions, but, you know, he still hasn't been seen. There's reports that he was injured and all these things. So, and it's unclear the president's own relationship with him. So yeah, it could happen, but, you know, let's wait to see.
Good to speak to you, Adam. Thank you very much indeed. Adam Lucente, who's a correspondent for Al Monitor, an independent Middle East news source. Quick break, back in a moment.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, and a very good evening to you. This is Talk, and it is Petrie here with you up until 1 o'clock. And coming up at midnight, it is your chance to talk back. And I do want to talk to you about reforms ideas for reforming the prison system, and that is to rent spaces in foreign prisons, such as those in El Salvador and in Kosovo, and it's cheaper. It's cheaper for us to send them over there and these foreign prisoners, and let them serve their time there instead of paying the money that we pay to have them serve their time here. On paper, sounds like a good idea. Denmark have done it. Other countries are considering it as well. But in the real world, can it actually happen? We're going to be discussing that in a few moments' time after the next break to find out really if leaving the ECHR is going to stop those pesky lawyers from getting involved and stopping people from being sent to places such as El Salvador. So we'll be looking into that. But I want to talk to you at midnight about what you think about these plans and the Nightingale prisons. I mean, initially I heard that and I just thought, well, who's actually going to work in there? We've got a shortage of prison guards as it is. Who's going to work in them? They're not like the hospitals at all. They have to be secure because the people within them are lawbreakers. So I can't see how that's going to happen. There's been no costings either. We're not being told how much that might cost. But also during that speech, Nigel Farage said there are some people who cannot ever be rehabilitated and for certain crimes that they cannot be rehabilitated. So I want to know from you if you believe that to be true. Are there certain people, certain crimes, certain criminals that can never be forgiven, that we must I mean, those people that we know can never be forgiven, we already put into prison for a whole of life term, right? But what about other types of prisoners? Do you think there are other types of prisoners that really should never be forgiven, that those crimes alone mean that they cannot be rehabilitated? So give me a call on that, 0344 499 1000. I mean, I'm more interested in the fact that our prison system just doesn't seem to be fit for purpose for anybody, for victims, for prisoners, for government, for taxpayers, for anyone. It doesn't seem to be doing the job that it was designed to do. So I'm completely perplexed as to why we have such a high recidivism rate, and there doesn't seem to be any way we can stop that. I don't know, other countries can, but whatever. So give me a call. Send me a message as well. Text the word talk and your message to 87222. So that's coming up at midnight. Before 11 o'clock as well, we're going to be talking about those pesky subscriptions that we all get roped into, that we all get stuck with, and then discover that we're paying monthly for something we don't even use or didn't even want in the first place. So we're going to be discussing that as well. So all of that is coming up, along with Amy Fisher at the top of the hour. Quick break, back in a mo.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk and it is Petrie here with you. And Reform UK leader Nigel Farage has unveiled a controversial criminal justice proposal to deport foreign offenders and rent overseas prison spaces in nations including El Salvador, Kosovo and the Baltic states. Well, the party claims the move, alongside temporary Nightingale facilities, would free up over 10,000 spaces to end Labour's early release schemes. However, Labour dismissed the plan plan as an unviable long-term gimmick that fails to address immediate overcrowding. Legal observers also point out that the strategy overlooks unconvicted remand prisoners who comprise at the moment roughly a third of the foreign inmate population, an omission party leaders left unanswered during today's press announcement. Joining me now to discuss this is Richard Garside, Director of the Centre for Crime and Justice Studies. Thank you for joining me again, Richard. Good to see you. I just want to start with looking at the idea of sending prisoners overseas. I know that Denmark has already looked into that and doing that. But Nigel Farage says that by leaving the ECHR, that means that we will have freedom, carte blanche, to send people wherever we want to send them, wherever agrees to take them. Is that in the real world true?
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, if you leave human rights conventions and you pass laws, you can kind of do whatever you like. So I'm sure that's true, that if we were to leave the ECHR, then it creates greater scope for a British government to do some pretty grisly and unpleasant things, yeah.
Will there not, though, be lawyers fighting anyway? I mean, there was a question asked of him today saying, look, you know, we know what happened with Rwanda. I know that we're still in the ECHR, but that there would be some pushback, surely, to be sending people to places like El Salvador, for example.
Yeah, I mean, there would be. I mean, again, I suppose you could, in theory, change the domestic law to significantly undermine, citizens' rights, which would allow, or indeed visitors' rights in the case of foreign nationals, to allow this kind of stuff. I mean, in a sense, I don't think this is it's not fundamental. I mean, it is, one sense, a legal issue, but it's kind of, in a sense, not fundamentally a legal issue. I think it's a political question. It's arguably a moral question, but it's also just a practical question. I mean, it's a ridiculous suggestion that this is really possible and can get off the ground just in practical terms, never mind for all the other reasons.
So in practical terms, what would it take for a government, if they were in government, to get the spaces, to start the process? How long would it take?
Well, I think it would take years, and I think this is the problem, really, because I mean, first of all, one assumes that the government would first want to negotiate with countries, of foreign national prisoners, to see if those countries will take those prisoners back. The highest number of foreign nationals at the moment are Albanian prisoners. There's roughly 1,000 of them. So I guess you go to the government of Albania and ask them if they will take their prisoners back, or will have their prisoners in Albania. They may or may not agree to that, and this will be true of many other countries. So you're going to take a few years at least just to negotiate that. Maybe at the same time you're also talking to people like El Salvador and seeing if they will take the prisoners. Well, the US has famously sent prisoners to El Salvador. It's sent about 300. Prisoners in all. We've got about 10,000 foreign nationals in prison, and that includes about 6,500 who are serving sentences, who I imagine that the individuals that Nigel Farage is talking about. So it's just not a serious proposal, and particularly when there are actually much simpler and easier things that could address the problem that Nigel Farage says he wants to address in terms of finding prison places. Yeah,
it does seem, I was reading an article a little bit earlier on, the Prison Officers Association, Mark Fairhurst, is saying that he doesn't understand why nobody is talking about remand prisoners. So we've got something like 17,000 people at the moment who have not yet been to court, who have not been found guilty of anything yet, but they're locked up, taking up 17,000 prison spaces. I don't understand. I mean, I'm a fairly logical person. I don't understand the issue with saying, well, we're going to let people out who are definitely guilty, but we're going to keep those people that we don't know if they're guilty or not locked up. Am I missing something here?
I mean, there's a whole issue about the early release scheme and, individual. I mean, nobody currently serves the full sentence. If you're given 5 years by a court, for example, you never serve 5 years, never have. And, there are good arguments why you might want to release people midway through the sentence. You can supervise them in the community, help in their resettlement. I do have some concerns about how much of a gap now has opened up between the declared sentence in the court and what sentences individuals serve, because I think then that's something that the public just don't understand, and understandably they don't understand. It doesn't seem to make much sense. So there's a whole argument there that's our sentences are far too long, and so what we need to do is try to reduce sentence length rather than try and resolve that problem administratively behind the scenes, as it were, by ministers and others kind of agreeing to these early release schemes, which can be widely kind of challenged and questioned. The point that Mark Fairhurst makes about remand prisoners is absolutely spot on. We have a huge backlog in the courts at the moment, and lots of people languishing in prison waiting for a trial. And when we remember that a lot of those currently sitting in prison waiting for trial, when they finally get to trial, will either be acquitted, and then it will all have been for nothing, and they'll have lost how many years of their life languishing in prison. Or even if they get a prison sentence, the time they've served on remand will be discounted, and so in practice a number of them may be released anyway. So it's a ridiculous situation. We do need to resolve this, because they just take up a huge number of places, and there's quite a lot of injustice there. And the other big one is recalls, and individuals who are recalled to prison having been released, often for some technical reasons, they're sent back to prison. Back in 1993 or thereabouts, there were around 100 people in prison at any one point under recall. It's now about 12,000. Wow. So something's gone very badly wrong with the recall system. Then you can start thinking about so-called IPP prisoners. These are individuals who are serving life sentence-like sentences, often for relatively petty offences. The sentence was abolished in 2012, but there's still around 2,500 prisoners languishing, trying to get out at the moment, often having spent many, many more years than the court judged. And actually, the one that a lot of people forget, female prisoners. You could release tomorrow the vast number of female prisoners, and they would pose no risk to the public whatsoever. And there's about 3,000 to 4,000 of those. So there's lots of things that could be done. I read in one of the papers earlier that Nigel Farage has said that Andy Burnham lacks the imagination to solve these problems. Now, that may or may not be true. I don't think that Nigel Farage has any greater imagination if he's just kind of banging on about foreign prisoners and trying to send them to El Salvador, when there are so many more simple, practical things which could be implemented a lot more quickly than years and years negotiation to get foreign prisoners out of the country.
The other thing I'm confused about, Richard, is that if somebody commits a crime in this country and are prosecuted in this country and are found guilty in this country, and then they're sent to jail, what legal stance do we have in sending them to serve that prison sentence even if it is their country of origin?
Well, that can obviously be done through negotiation.
But don't they have to serve some of it here and then they're sent?
Not necessarily. That's that. I think, and that again, going back to the law could be changed to facilitate that more.
Right.
And host country, the country of origin won't necessarily want those individuals back, because they may have their own issues with the prison system.
I was going to say.
Part of any negotiation might be, we'll say, well, we'll take ours back, you have to take yours back. So there's that. We may kind of be a bit of a zero sums game on that. But, I dare say that there's probably a lot of foreign nationals, indeed, I know there are definitely foreign national prisoners currently in British prisons who would love to go back to their country of origin, and they don't have the opportunity. But the other thing to bear in mind, there's also lots of people in prison in the UK who are judged to be foreign nationals, who often, have lived here most of their lives. Maybe they are technically a foreign national, but they've lived here since they were 3 years old. They have no relationship in the country of origin according to their passport. They may not even speak the language. And, so there's a whole lot of different types of foreign national prisoners in the kind of the mix when we talk about them in the round. Some are clearly individuals who've just been in the country, they got into difficulty, they've committed crimes, they're in prison, they probably would like to go home. But others, home is here, and it just, through kind of, through accident or design or whatever else. Maybe they've lived here most of their lives, but their passport says they're from somewhere else.
Just before I let you go, what about these Nightingale prisons, again, that Nigel Farage is talking about, providing 12,000 spaces in Nightingale prisons? He said, well, we built the hospitals, we can build the prisons. I see them as slightly different because they need to be secure locations and they'll need staffing. Do we not have a problem with staffing the prisons we've got at the moment?
Just a bit, and I mean, I'm certainly not an expert on health, but as I understand it, one of the problems with the Nightingale hospitals was they had these shiny facilities and lots of beds, but they didn't have the staff to staff them. So it is interesting. I mean, it's almost you chuck Nightingale in front of prison, or it's almost like it's a kind of a magic spell, you know. And just because you stick Nightingale in front of prison, it doesn't mean that these cells will suddenly magically appear. And it's precisely that kind of magical thinking that I think which has got us into the problems in the first place. It takes a long time to build prison places for all sorts of reasons. Now there's an argument about whether the planning system is too slow, and it may or may not be, but they are, as you say, they're not just like courts or schools. They are highly secure institutions. It's a very specialist build. It takes a long time to build these places. Often there is local opposition to building prisons because people don't want prisons in their backyard. And the idea, first of all, that just by sticking Nightingale in front of it and just picking a number, 12,000, that somehow that will make it happen is just frankly ridiculous.
They're talking about using old army barracks that have already, to quote somebody in Reform, have already got fences round them.
Well, and you know, there's a whole history of repurposing different kinds of buildings for prisons. I mean, there are old stately homes that are now prisons. There are certainly former army barracks that are prisons. These tend to be low security prisons, so-called open prisons, where yes, you can do a degree of repurposing. But if that's what they're saying, why don't they say that? They don't need to kind of stick Nightingale in front of them.
It's good to speak to you, Richard. I know I've got to let you go. Thank you very much indeed for joining me. Richard Garside there, Director of the Centre for Crime and Justice Studies. Quick break, back in a sec.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk, and it is Petrie here with you. We've all done it. We've all done it. I've done it. And I know I'm in good company. And that is accidentally, somehow, got involved in a subscription to something that you didn't mean to get stuck into, right? The UK Prime Minister Andy Burnham has announced new measures to combat subscription traps and misleading retail discounts, framing them as everyday fixes to ease the cost of living. From January, the rules will require businesses to provide clearer upfront pricing, send regular renewal reminders, and introduce a 14-day cooling off period. Crucially, cancelling subscriptions must become just as easy as signing up. I mean, I've signed up to things I didn't even know I signed up to. The government estimates that British consumers are currently wasting around £1.6 billion annually. That averages out at about £168 per person on unwanted auto renewals, and retailers will be banned from artificially inflating prices to advertise deceptive bargains, ensuring fairness and protecting household budgets. So have you ever been caught up in the subscription trap? Adam French joins me now, Head of Consumer Finance at Money Facts. Hello there, Adam. Good to see you.
Evening, Petrie. It's always a pleasure.
Have you fallen into a subscription trap?
Yeah, of course I have. I think everyone has.
I think everyone has, yeah.
I don't think a single person who shops on the internet hasn't fallen victim to one of these at some point in time, or at the very least signed up for something and just forgotten they had done in the first place and found themselves paying for it another year even though they haven't used it, which I had happen to me just the other day. So, far from alone. So these rules are extremely welcome. And hopefully will make a real difference when it comes to things like those nudges, when it comes to when it auto-renews, you are warned it's auto-renewing, and you can actually then act and cancel it as long as you're checking your emails anyway, which is something else I'm not brilliant at, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm not either. But a couple of weeks ago, actually, my son was round and he wanted to watch a wrestling match or something, and it was on DAZN. And he said, no, we can just pay for one viewing of this. So you go on the television, and I hate doing all that, so he did all that. And it was 15 something pounds. I thought, well, that's okay if he wants to watch the wrestling match, that's all right. And then I said, but it says that now I'm signed up to a subscription. And he said, no, it's just, and it was. There's a little print at the bottom saying that you're now signed up to pay monthly. And he said, it's okay. He said, we'll just cancel it. Oh my goodness me. I mean, we did cancel it, but it took about, I don't know, 20 minutes of bouncing around different places, little hidden bits on the screen. The writing wasn't very clear about whether I had unsubscribed or not unsubscribed. And so it was deliberately designed to be confusing. And I mean, I'm sorry to call out DAZN, but it was a nightmare. I just speak as I find. So you've got to be careful with things like that as well, haven't you? If you're going to go and watch a movie or something else online, suddenly you're paying monthly for something.
Yeah, absolutely. It was your son who wanted to watch the wrestling. We all believe that. No, you're right. And that's a really good example, actually, of exactly what these rules will change. So it was something that was already coming in April, but Andy Burnham's brought it forward to January, which loads of research shows is the peak time of year for us signing up for subscriptions for things. We're spending happy. Christmas is out of the way. We're stuck at home in winter. We're more likely to pay subscriptions. And actually, it has to be a lot more clear when we're signing up for subscriptions than it is at the moment. So, for example, in that one, the small print, it'd have to be extremely clear that you're signing up for a subscription. You'd get a 14-day calling off period to be able to cancel that subscription, and it should be just as easy to cancel it as to sign up. So one click sign up, one click to cancel.
Yeah, no, this was a nightmare.
It should be that straightforward.
Yeah.
But those rules come in January. So until then, you continue going through this labyrinthine process with some places because, to be honest, they don't want you to cancel. They want you to keep paying on a monthly basis.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I completely understand that, but it was very, very tricky. But the other thing, though, is with subscriptions, I thought they had already changed the rules on this because certainly if you've got a smartphone, you can go on and have a look and see what you're subscribed to. And it does, in a lot of cases, allow you to unsubscribe with just a click of a button very, very easily. So I thought that was already in process.
There were already some rules in place, but they're a bit wishy-washy as things stand. So this is tightening up the rules and making it a lot more clear-cut now. So it is, again, really well. It's good politics, really, from Andy Burnham in terms of it's a fairly small change, but actually it makes lives a little bit better for people come January. So why not bring those rules forward a little bit more? But you're right. I mean, historically, there have been problems with subscription models, and back in the olden days, there were things like prize draws that were all doing subscriptions that were really hard to cancel. Yeah. You can't be subscribed to something longer than a year at the moment without having to be offered the opportunity to cancel. That wasn't the case a few years ago. So there have been steadily improvements happening here, but actually being told, given that 14-day calling off period, making it as easy to cancel as it is to sign up, and like the app stores are already really good at this. Like, these are all positive things for us if we're looking at our monthly outgoings. And one of the best things you can do is just look at your bank statement, see where money's going out on a regular basis. You'll probably spot a subscription you didn't know you had, forgotten about. You could easily cancel. You think about £10 a month over the course of a year, you're 120 quid better off.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
it's those kind of
adds
things
up,
that are really
right?
worthwhile.
I mean, the other thing that I did, I think it was either on, I don't know, some exercise thing that I, for 5 seconds, thought I might do, or it was something to do with the dogs, and I thought I was getting a 30-day free trial on this, and then suddenly noticed that I was being charged. I think it was quite a substantial amount of money. Actually, it was £35 to be subscribed to, and I don't ever remember agreeing to pay anything at all on this 30-day free trial. It didn't. I'm not an idiot when it comes to these things. I'm usually quite good, and I contacted them and said, look, I didn't agree to this. You need to cancel this straight away. And they said, oh well, we'll cancel it, but we're still going to take that 35 quid for the first month.
Ooh, cheeky. Well,
cheeky.
That is the trouble with some of these subscriptions, is you pay for the period that you have access to it as well. So if you ask to cancel it, maybe you have to give a month's notice, therefore you're on the hook for that month's subscription. And actually that's one issue that these rules probably will not resolve. So as long as you have access, you are liable to pay for whatever you've had access to. So things like video subscription services, you cancel it, you've still got it for the rest of the month. It's not like you get your money back straight away, so you end up squeezing in as much as you can before you get to the end of the month, and then it's gone. But like silly things like that where you end up subscribed to 8 different video platforms, and certainly with Amazon Prime at the moment you can subscribe to HBO and Paramount and all sorts through that, and it snowballs. So actually having a clear review and making it easier to cancel just gives you a little tool that makes a small difference to making that budgeting task a little bit easier, a little bit less time consuming, because like even writing about money for a living, not the most fun job in the world when it comes to managing your own budget. So anything that makes it a bit less stressful is welcome news in my view.
No, I completely agree. And I would welcome regular messages from these companies. They have our details to say, look, you've signed up to this subscription. Do you still want it? That's
yeah, absolutely. I mean, there was some research from Barclays out not long ago around subscriptions saying that the average adult has around 8 subscriptions, which feels really low to me. So maybe I am the problem. Sure, I've got more than that. But actually, those regular notifications that you're actually subscribed to this thing, do you still want to be subscribed to it? Particularly if it's not something you've used in a long time. I think
it's not in their interest to do that, is it? It's not in their interest to do that.
Which is why we need the rules to force them to do it. Because ultimately, if you're paying for it and not using it, that's exactly the dream customer a lot of these subscription-based businesses want, to be honest, because you're not costing them anything, you're bringing money in. So they are being nudged to actually do something here to make sure they're not taking money away from you, and frankly they shouldn't be.
Yeah, I think it's a brilliant idea. The other thing that that Andy Burnham wants to do is to ban this artificial inflating of prices, and I was reading about this a while ago, and it was like if say a dress is on sale for 40 quid, it only has to have been one store in the entire country where it was, a price that wouldn't allow that sale item to be called a sale item. And that seems to be a loophole that a lot of companies do use in order to say, look, this is on sale, it's been reduced by 20%, and it was just in that one store that it was 20% higher. And so they're able to say they can lower the price.
Yeah, they're quite good retailers. They know their loopholes. So it used to be the rule is generally it has to have been for sale at the higher price for longer, and it's on for the sale price as well. So if it's on sale price for 2 weeks, it has to have been at the higher price for 3 weeks, right? But no one says how widely available that higher price item had to have been before then, which is a loophole that they've cottoned onto pretty quickly. And things like RRP prices, recommended retail prices, how often have you ever seen something actually for sale at that price? It always seems massively inflated towards anything you see in store. And it's those kind of psychological tricks that get us to spend money when maybe we wouldn't have done otherwise, because we are hardwired to think, brilliant, a bargain, I need to snap this up before it's gone. And it's clever retailing, really. I mean, hats off to them that they know how to tap into our psychology to get us to spend money. That's how, ultimately a lot of these retailers function. But it tips over into sort of slightly abusive behaviour, and it just needs a correction. And that's why these rules are being brought in, to ensure that actually when you see something is a knockdown price, it reflects something that's legitimately been a proper sale price and not a loophole that's seeking to take advantage of you. So again, really good rules that are coming in. Madness, we had to wait until April for them to come in, and now they've been brought forward to January.
Yeah,
that
why
still
is
seems
that?
Like give retailers a chance to get their house in order, essentially, and to make sure that they can all do these things without being on the wrong side of the law. But, Christmas is coming up in a few months, believe it or not. I can't believe how far we're on to this year. And these rules come in afterwards. So we've still got a little bit left of the Wild West of sales prices. And I know Every year, Black Friday comes around, and
how do we determine? Because with advertising on the television, right, we know that there's very strict rules and very strict laws surrounding advertising. Not allowed to sell the snake oil. You know, there are laws around that. But with sale pricing, like you said, we're always looking for a bargain. And if you wanted something and it's there 15% lower, you're thinking, oh, that's now's the time to do it. How do we check? How can we be more savvy to make sure that it is actually a sale price?
There's a couple of things you can do. So take, for example, a large retailer, Amazon. There are websites that track the prices across them. So there's a website called camelcamelcamel.com, and that will track the price history of any product on Amazon. So you can see actually if that deal was legitimately decent or not. So that's a really helpful way of checking prices. And you can just do old-fashioned price comparison, look at lots of different sites. Is it cheaper somewhere else? Is it not? If it's a good deal and it's something you want, then by all means, go for it. The best thing I do is stick something in my basket with an online retailer, and then I've got a 48-hour rule before I actually commit to the purchase. Look around, do I actually still want it? Was I just being impulsive? And actually, that's probably saved me more money than any sale price ever has done, to be perfectly honest. So it's having a bit of a self-discipline when it comes to that online basket before you click purchase that can make all the difference, to be honest.
Don't talk to me about self-discipline when it comes to shopping, Adam. Online, anyway. Yeah, I mean, the other thing I do is I find something on Amazon and then go to the retailer. And often the price different. Often you find them a lot cheaper away from the Amazon pricing. So that's something else that I do.
Yeah, absolutely. Go direct because they're not paying a commission then to big sites like Amazon. So that can make a big difference.
Yeah, exactly. But self-discipline, no. Adam, thank you very much indeed. Good to speak to you, Adam French, Head of Consumer Finance at Money Facts. So check your subscriptions. But I don't know how I get involved in these things, but I certainly do. It costs me a fortune. Anyway, coming up, just to let you know that Amy Fisher will be in the studio in a few moments' time. She'll be here to go through the story of the day and also to go through the papers. And then coming up at midnight, of course, it's your chance to talk back and to tell me what you think about the prison reforms that Reform is talking about bringing in if they ever make it into the position of being in power. Do you agree with them? Do you think they're a brilliant idea? And are there some people who can never, ever be rehabilitated? Talking about that at midnight.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, and a very good evening to you. This is Petrie here with you on Talk for the next couple of hours. And coming up at midnight, I want to talk to you about this prison scheme of reforms, the idea of sending prisoners, foreign prisoners, to El Salvador or Kosovo, places like that, renting prison spaces from them, and thereby getting 10,000 spaces basically available to the prison system, although in reality that might take years in order to come up with these deals, to make the arrangements, to send prisoners overseas. But he says coming out of the ECHR will mean that nobody will be able to stop him. And that he will be able to do that. So I want to know what you think of that. He also said in his speech that there are certain prisoners, certain crimes that cannot be rehabilitated, that there are people who we just forget it. They're just never, ever going to be rehabilitated. I am talking to somebody at midnight about that, actually. So I'd like you to listen to that and then give me a call on that. But do you agree with that? Do you think there are certain crimes that are unforgivable by society, that actually we shouldn't be forgiving of these crimes? I mean, there are criminals, of course, serving full-term, full life sentences, a handful of them anyway. So we already do that with certain crimes and certain criminals, but not for all of the bad crimes. So I'm wondering if you think that there is a space for saying, no. We're just going to say no to you and throw away the key. Give me a call, 0344 499 1000. Calls are charged at the national rate, but we do call you back. And text the word talk and your message to 87222. I do have a message here from Andy who says, most of the media is missing the point. You deport only a couple of boatloads to El Salvador and the boats would stop and the traffickers' business would collapse. That's the point. No, Andy, we're not talking about people coming across on boats. We're talking about people who are taking up prison spaces, people who've been through the court system, people who've been incarcerated in the British prison system, even though they are foreign nationals. That's who Nigel Farage is talking about sending to El Salvador, not people who come across on boats. So very much is not the point. So just thought I'd clear that for you. With me in the studio to go through the stories of the day and through the papers is the fabulous Amy Fisher, former Director of Comms at the Conservative Party. Hello.
Super nice to see you again.
It's very nice to have you back in the studio. Now, what do you make of what Nigel Farage says that Reform is planning to do with prisons, Nightingale prisons as well?
Well, just to start on the Nightingale prisons, in any of this mess that the government finds themselves, because it is of their own making. I mean, they have decided that they wanted to go for this early release scheme.
Rather than something a bit more difficult.
Rather than something a bit more difficult, or something a bit outside of the box. And so I will return to the Nightingale prisons idea. This is of the government's making. They are now in this situation whereby... of course, I think almost everybody thinks, my goodness, PC Harper's killers shouldn't be let out. But now they've got themselves into this kind of salami slicing situation of, well, OK, if they try and carve something out to stop PC Harper's killers getting out, what could be the legal, horrific ramifications for anybody else in prison convicted of manslaughter, let alone all the other awful things that people are in prison for, like child sexual offences, domestic violence. This, by the way, is in no way a defence of their early release prison, because I don't think they should be going for that anyway. But they've got themselves into a situation where you have to draw a line somewhere, and now they're in a mess about where they think they're going to draw a line about their own early release system. And let's bear in mind, it was Jack Straw who got himself into trouble and had to resign over the very same issue, 20 years ago when he started an early release system, and then it turned out that he'd let out a couple of terrorists, a man who actually went on to sort of murder his partner. So, the fact we're going around the same boys again is just so fundamentally depressing in that no one, and so I'm not just going to continue finger pointing at Labour, although it is them who a year ago proposed this scheme. No one over the last 20 years, when we have had an ever-burgeoning prison population, has in any way come up with an alternative. So certainly, I used to work in the MOJ 10 years ago, and sort of back then we were, we as the coalition and then Conservative governments were very much holding on to the idea of tagging and smarter satellite tagging and real-time dynamic tagging would be the answer. I mean, well, fine, but the problem with that is none of the private companies contracted to do it were actually able to. As in my time at the MOJ, we found out that Serco, who are providing tens of thousands of these tags, were tagging dead people and charging the government for it. And unfortunately, with regards to sophistication, efficacy and trustability in tagging, it's kind of not that much more advanced. So, even if there were to be sudden improvements...
there are people waiting for months and months and months to be tagged.
Exactly. So even if there were to be some sudden sort of wholesale change in tagging, that's not going to help with this very acute situation that we've got coming up. And pretty much by November, that there literally aren't going to be enough cells with spaces to put people in. And I know that to be true, because I say, when you have prison overcrowding, and I've been around numerous prisons where literally you cannot fit another body safely or humanely in a space available. You just can't. But as I say, I just think the government have got themselves into the worst of all worlds by seeming to promise that PC Harper's killers will not be let out, which, by the way, I wholeheartedly agree with. But then what about all the other downstream
they're saying that it's impossible without holding back everybody who's guilty of manslaughter.
The other manslaughter.
Which I would have thought would be a positive. But then you're in a pickle where you're not releasing as many people as you need spaces for.
This is what I mean. They've got themselves into the worst of all positions, and in their communication about it. Because if you look at the front pages today, literally I have in front of me, as you, the Times and the Telegraph, that seem to have... Well, the Times is going with Burnham demand plan to keep PC killers in jail. The Telegraph and other papers are going sort of on the more negative side of Burnham spitting in our faces by freeing killers. So even if they have got, the government have got some clever legal policy sort of emergency tweak to legislation to get themselves out of it, their communications as of now is absolutely all over the place.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. Their communications... I mean, we've just come from a Labour government where the communications were absolutely shocking. I would have thought they'd have learned something about that. But Andy Burnham appears to be a man who wants to please everybody. And, of course, that is not possible to please everybody, and he's a people pleaser. As mayor of Manchester, that's all he did really, was please a lot of people.
And you can when you're a regional...
When you're a regional mayor, right? And then you blame the government when you can't.
Exactly, and you're sort of serving a constituency of a few tens of thousands of people, not, the entire country of, well, the entire UK of however many billions it is. And so, as I say, this smacks to me of a fundamental problem around what they're actually going to do with the capacity issue and a creaking justice system, combined with the horrible communications non-plan around it. And then the Burnhamism of wanting to be all things to all people. So it's a sort of triple-layered, really horrible issue that they've got. And look, it's completely dominating the front. We're middle of August. This is silly season. There should be stories about, I mean, you know, paragliding hamsters and Cliff Richards in some way. I mean, we're in August. And yet what we've got for the government is front page is absolutely dominated by this prisons crisis, by, you know, the migrant crisis, and it's shaping up to be a pretty grim August for them and for anybody who looks at this policy of early release and worries whether people who've committed manslaughter, people who've committed domestic violence, people who have committed ownership, you know, viewing child pornography offence. I mean, these are just grim, not just stories on the front page of August newspapers. These are grim realities for, you know, a Burnham government, which is what, a month in
2 weeks old, I think. 2 or 3 weeks.
I'm being generous. I doubled it.
Yeah. 2 or 3 weeks.
Two or 3 weeks old.
Yeah. But I mean, it's of his own making as well. But it's a very depressing situation when a lot of the country, of course, are saying, well, there shouldn't be these early releases anyway, because wherever there's a person in prison, then there are victims of that person in prison, and those victims want that person in prison to spend the time that they were given.
You know, society needs these people to be in prison because that's why we have a justice system. If you do something wrong, there are consequences, and if you then start salami slicing, removing the severity of the consequences, then you get to a very strange place.
And they don't work, because the last prison release scheme, I think there was there was so many recalls that actually those prison spaces were only available for a short amount of time, and all these prisoners were recalled.
So it's just this endless kind of wash through again. So going into my sort of a mini rant about the disaster that the government has found themselves in over this. On the subject of the Nightingale prisons, I don't think they're a terrible idea.
Really?
I genuinely don't, because I think in terms of the infrastructure, chuck up a few Nissan huts and put a bit of barbed wire around it. Look, I'm being slightly flippant on that point, but so
who's going to run them? Because we haven't got enough prison guards as it is.
We haven't, but you could, I think, do there's a way with rotation shifts, potentially splitting shifts with prison guards and police on their rest days. Look, I think there is a way that you could find enough trained staff.
12,000 prisoners, though. That's what he's talking about. 12,000 places.
But for me, that's better than having potentially dangerous people walking the streets.
Well, the solution that some people have come up with is to release a good many of the people on remand who haven't been found guilty of anything
quite
yet.
Dangerous people.
Yes, but you'd be selective.
You get remand because they don't want to let you out on bail.
No, but they still haven't been found guilty.
No, OK, so now we're getting into a presumption of, you know, innocence and guilt and all the rest of it. So I'm totally with you on the sort of purist philosophical point of it. But remand is used when the risk around bail is judged to be too great. So you can get some awfully not very nice people.
Yes, but you could apply the same rules as you apply to early release of people who've actually been found guilty.
Yes.
To releasing those on remand.
I don't look.
The 17,000
as very imperfect as it is. The bit about a sort of Nightingale-style scenario is it's sort of just about maintains kind of a status quo in terms of safety and risk of people who are actually on the street than any other alternative.
But they would have to be.
That I have looked at it. So it's I'm not like in favour of it. It is
they'd have to be in the style of open prisons, though, which a lot of people would object to.
That's exactly what you do. You wouldn't be. You wouldn't be putting sort of Cat A's or Cat B or anywhere in there. You would be.
Well, you could put your reform prisoners in there.
Pardon?
Put your the prisoners who are on remand in there, in the Nightingale prisons.
Potentially. I mean, there are issues around the women's estate as well, and whether we should just sort of do away with the entire whole of the women's estate. That, you know, there aren't although that actually, frankly, doesn't really create very many places.
3 or 4,000.
3 or 4,000 compared to sort of 82, 83 of the sort of male estate. But I think there's a way that you pick either people very much coming towards the end of their sentences or people who are...
We've got 1,000 people in prison, I think, at the moment, over the age of 80.
Well, this kind of thing, I think, this is what I mean about, I think there is a way you could pick cohorts of people that are the least risk, that still keeps them in some kind of secure, albeit very imperfect environment, that for me is the least risky way of going about any of this, which, by the way, is all grot.
Yeah, it really is. And what do you think about saying that there are some prisoners who are beyond?
Yes, I believe in whole life terrorists.
You do?
Yes.
For particular prisoners or particular crimes?
I think it's a combination of both, in the sense that you could have somebody who commits a really horrible, I mean, God, not that there's any nice murder, but you can have somebody that commits a really horrible murder that is a sort of, well, the French would call it a crime of passion. It's born out of particular circumstances. And then you can have somebody who commits a relatively straightforward murder, but is actually indicative of a wider sociopathic sort of mindset. So I think the people that we tend to have on whole life terrorists, quite a lot of them are child killers, actually.
And quite a lot of them are police officers.
Well, yes, because that's the combination of circumstance, right? That they've done something, and it's a combination of them doing something when you're meant to be a person who's taken the oath and the trust, and people look to you for security. So it's a double annihilation, if you like.
But if reform reformed the prison system in the way that they want to do it, in other words, there would be more people on full life term sentencing. There'd be a return to sentencing for things like shoplifting. They would lift the prison estate by 18,000 places. So again, so they would increase the and they're saying as well that nobody should be out early on there. I mean, then that has been a system that we've employed in this country to make sure there's good behaviour in prisons, to make sure that people sign up.
Yeah, I mean, there has to be some kind of reward, right? This is why.
But the reform is saying no, so that would extend prison places.
So whilst I agree in a whole life terrorists for the most heinous of crimes in very specific circumstances, you know, we can't have a prison system without the possibility of rehabilitation and hope, because otherwise you're setting yourself up for failure. But then this is the age-old problem. I mean, it's been the subject of the Gawk review, any review over the last 30 years, which says, OK, prison can work, but it only, you know, prison can work as a deterrent, and also prison can work in literally keeping dangerous people off the streets and locked up. You know, but there has to be the rehabilitation aspect to it, and prison just doesn't really do that.
It's not working for anybody.
It's not working for anybody. There aren't enough, you know, courses. There isn't enough education. There isn't enough counselling. There's not enough good money. And this is, you know, as night follows day, as you know, Tuesday has kind of come after Monday today. I mean, it doesn't require another review of the prison system for us all to know that that's the bit of prison that doesn't work, and that's the bit that requires an awful lot of money and investment at every level, societal, you know, political will, all of this kind of thing. And it certainly is in no way going to help the government's current problem.
No, but it seems that this prison release scheme is the easy way out. That's what it feels like.
And really horrible.
And really horrible.
So again, like so much of, you know, OK, so, you know, Burnham's government is just 3 weeks old, as we just said, but, you know, the Labour government, they just get themselves into these peckle, you know, it'd be about the, I don't know, even going back to like the winter fuel allowance where they needed to save some money. So they sort of went for this, like, oh, we're making a tough decision, then end up reversing it because they got themselves into a horrible pickle. They just sort of seem to do this because they think it's going to solve an immediate problem. Then, well, they haven't really thought through the ramifications of it. Then they communicate it horribly, and then they end up reversing on it anyway, which this has all the hallmarks of. It has all the hallmarks
of as well. I completely agree. But it's OK, because Andy Burnham's going on a tour to find out about cost of living crisis.
Oh, yes, because I'm sorry, I need to go tour around the country to find out that people are finding it really expensive to travel anywhere, heat their homes and buy food.
I know. And he's got local MPs to tell him that as well. Ugh. quick break. We'll be back in just a moment.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk, and it's Petrie here with you, and with me the wonderful Amy Fisher, former Director of Comms for the Tory Party. Let's have it, which of course during that time the communications were...
It's seamless.
Perfect. The Times newspaper for Tuesday. This is the photograph of the mega dinghy, huge inflatable boat carrying a record 230 migrants arrived in Dover yesterday. This is a 15-metre-long vessel said to be buckling in the water as it headed towards the British coast. It certainly is a sight to behold, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think I'm right in saying I can spot, what, 2 women in there?
Yeah,
this is the thing.
Right. Yeah, there are 2 women at the front.
A couple of women at the front. Well, look, did you see over the weekend there was a sort of fantastic bit of what I can only describe as sort of classic Mail on Sunday? They'd sent a couple of reporters over to the French coast, and they had this big sort of double-page expose on the fact that there were several sports shops.
Oh, selling...
Did you see that exclusively sold, like, dinghies and life jackets? There was not a single tennis racket, golf club, rounder's bat, sports sock to be bought, just, you know, an array of life jackets, which, as I say, was just so sort of classic Mail on Sunday. It sort of produced a wry smile. But, I mean, this picture does not... the weather is going to remain incredibly warm for the next few days, so this probably isn't going to be the last of, you know, whether it's a sort of mega dinghy or otherwise. Yeah, again, adding to...
I mean, even today, Farage did accept that the number of boats, and I don't think he meant that, you know, just the number, but the number of people coming over boats had fallen.
Has fallen, yes.
He did acknowledge that.
That is true, as a year-on-year.
As a year-on-year. But these can no longer be called small boats, it would appear.
No, I mean, those 230 people. That's
extraordinary, isn't it?
Fairly substantial.
Yeah, and no sign of that stopping, and just hundreds and hundreds coming in every week. Everybody's getting pretty mightily fed up with it all. A daily pill for weight loss will keep you slim for life. The UK has become the first country in Europe to approve a daily weight loss pill that can be a treatment for life to stay slim and put type 2 diabetes into remission. Or fall... Oh, I'm not going to bother with that.
I was so looking at you thinking I really want you to pronounce that first.
There's no way I can... it's going to be called Foundeo. I'll use the brand name. And it helps people lose 12% of body weight on average, and trials show an effective long-term maintenance tool to stay healthy. I mean, this is the holy grail, isn't it?
Apparently so.
And seriously will save the NHS absolute billions.
It will, and I always feel like such a sort of naysayer whenever I sort of bring up. I'm just still concerned that we don't quite know exactly the longer-term effects of any of these. You know, we all...
But the longer-term effects of obesity are well known.
So. Yes, absolutely. But I mean, just in terms of things of sort of weight loss, hair loss and bone density and these kind of things, I agree overall that any of these drugs, and I'm going to say the ones I can present, like Ozempic and Wegovy and all this kind of thing, and yes, obesity in this country is still increasing kind of exponentially, and we're sort of twice as fat as we were in sort of 1994.
And it's younger and younger.
And it's younger and younger, and obviously the younger you become obese, the more likely you are to just sort of stay like that. So no, I absolutely overall agree that these are a good thing. I would like to understand a bit more about...
Yeah, this is different, because I thought this was just the same as the Wegovy pill, but it's not. This is a different pill. They're saying that this is the orforglipron. It's taken as a daily tablet, and there are no restrictions on the time of day it's taken or whether it's on food or water. This makes it more convenient than the rival Wegovy pill made by Novo Nordisk. I mean, these companies...
And it's about half the price.
It's about half the price, yeah.
Which for the NHS is, a bit...
It's a really good thing.
Yeah.
So it just depends if they will roll it out on the NHS, because it's got to be cheaper than people with type 2 diabetes.
And heart disease.
Yeah,
and...
Absolutely. Police probe whether Widdicombe suspect linked to Farage arson. I'm going to leave that story alone because there are complicated legals around any connection there with that case. So, the Daily Telegraph, no limit to migrant mega dinghies. A French lifeboat service warns that more asylum seekers will be piled onto boats after a record 230 crossed the channel in a single trip. That's nice of the French lifeboat services, isn't it? Burnham spitting in our faces by freeing killers, says Harper Friend. So, that is a particularly strong statement, isn't it, for the new Prime Minister? It's visceral.
Visceral. And this is what I mean, as we've just discussed. The whole policy around what they're actually going to do is a mess. But then any of the communications or sort of seeming plan around it is just awful. Which is awfully unclear.
I don't think he can win this one.
No, he can't. There's no easy
There's
absolutely nothing that he can do here, whether he...
Unless he halts it completely, in which case they run out of...
Yeah. Oh, 100%. That is the only thing
That's the only way.
But that has these real-world ramifications in November.
When we can't imprison anyone.
When we literally, there aren't any prison cells, there aren't any police holding cells, like there isn't literally a place to sort of put a person.
So he can't do that. Well, we'll see what he comes up with. Britain faces the worst food security crisis in a decade as drought spreads. Now, I talked about this last week. I think it was about this time last week. And nobody seems to be talking about it. But soaring temperatures are damaging wheat yields, vegetable crops and milk production. I was also reporting last week that a lot of the cows are having to eat their winter feed now because there's no grass. I mean, it's really very, very serious, and nobody seems to be really talking about it.
Well, no, I was talking about this with my parents who are out in Suffolk, and I'm just going to sort of out them as... it is a totally acceptable practice, although I like to tease them, it's slightly criminal. So sort of out in Suffolk, all the onion fields, you're allowed to go and, like, glean, and that's the sort of proper name for it, glean the kind of onions that the farmer doesn't quite get when he's ploughing the field. And the farmer's happy for you to do
the ones on the edges.
The ones that are stuck on the edges, exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
And the correct term for it is
gleaning. Not stealing.
Not stealing. But this is where I like to tease my parents.
Not scrumping.
Not scrumping. My mother was very keen a couple of years ago to teach me it's gleaning aim, it's not scrumping, but I do occasionally, they're sort of in their 70s and sort of terribly
with
lovely...
free onions.
Terribly lovely middle-class people, but I like to sometimes point out they're indulging in sort of borderline criminal activity here. But anyways, I was sort of slightly teasing her the other day about, surely this must be like onion gleaning time of year. And she was sort of like, oh, well, I know, darling, there's barely... The fields are all sort of, dried up, and then the farmer that they usually go to, like, glean, so they say it's not illegal, and the farmer is happy for them to do it. She just said the poor farmer there was kind of thinking about switching crops literally to, like, olives and grapes.
Yes.
As in what we would think of as being very
Mediterranean.
Mediterranean.
Yeah, absolutely. But they're going to have to do that.
Crops and these and these poor farmers who've, sort of been doing this for, lots of farmers in this country have been doing this, for sort of 100, 200, 300...
Yeah, family.
Yeah, it's family, it's heritage, it's quite literally a way of life, a British way of life, our countryside, and it's disappearing.
Yeah. It's going, and it's very, 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 very serious for our security, because people are thinking, oh, we'll just get food from overseas, but they're having the same drought we are, so they're going to keep their food. They're not going to send it over to us.
And also, if the world remains in the turmoil it is, like, what guarantees are there of any sort of supply chains and all of this kind of thing?
There really aren't.
But I mean, when people talk about, so what, 2/3 of the country is now officially in drought, and we have all these sort of hose pipe bans and all the rest of it, and again, as I was talking to my mother and she was saying, oh, I must go and water the garden now, darling, but she's talking about watering a vegetable patch, like with a watering can, not a hose pipe. And I just said back to her, Mummy, frankly, dealing with Thames water and walking down where I live every day and the amount of water just gushing out.
I know, how dare they?
You may as well take your hose pipe and just sort of spray it into the Felixstowe North Sea where you live, because that's what's happening in London every day.
That's exactly what's happening, and it is absolute. I mean, it's all right though, because I've just paid somebody £1 million.
Sure, £1 million golden
handshake.
signing on
yeah,
fee.
No, that'll help. That'll solve the problem. Yeah, well, I used to glean a lot of apples.
No, that is scrumping.
No, that
is scrumping.
No, that was gleaning.
No, hang on.
Although I would often be chased off by the owner of the orchard. I think he was saying, girl, you didn't take enough.
Yes, well done.
Well done.
Thank you very much.
Girl, take some more apples.
All of those kind of vibes.
Because it was gleaning. I wish I'd known that word in those days. Quick break, and Amy and I'll be back in just a moment.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, and good evening. It is Petrie here with you, and the lovely Amy Fisher, former Director of Comms for the Conservative Party, going through the papers. The Daily Mail has gone with that the day small boat crisis became a big boats crisis, and I feel that the Sun has done something very strange with its front page. You have a look at the Sun. I don't know whether they've done that on the actual.
Oh, how is that working? It's going around.
I don't
just
understand.
Sort of folding it in
oh,
half.
yes, it's probably
so it's going
that,
around,
isn't it?
I think, then to the sort
Oh,
of.
very good.
Oh, that's quite clever.
That's quite clever. So basically, they've done. Amy's figured it out because she's clever. They've done a wraparound so that on the back page, under the sport, no doubt, there is also a continuation of the length of that boat. So there you go. I'm glad you were in the studio because it would have taken me ages to figure that out. So not so small boat crisis, 230 migrants on a 49 mega dinghy. Craft holds more than an EasyJet flight.
Yeah, it's interesting. The Sun has gone for craft holds more than EasyJet flight, and the Mail with exactly the same story says that's more than a Boeing 737. So I think it's a sort of travel demographic.
A little travel demographic.
Travel demographic. The papers go there. But no, but the picture. I mean, the picture is shocking. I mean, it is
And there's quite a few of them, actually, without life vests on.
Without life vests.
The women haven't got life vests.
As we've already said, I can actually see, three women maybe at the front, but it's overwhelmingly young men, I would say. It's sort of economic migration rather than asylum seeking in any way.
I think that's probably right. Yeah, I think I can see 3 women.
Right at the front, right at the back there, I think.
But quite a lot of them not wearing...
No, in fact, the majority not wearing I would say, wearing life jackets.
They obviously didn't find those sports shops. The Mirror, as a 5th heat wave of the summer hits and wildfires take hold, the country is left high and dry. That's an extraordinary...
It's awful. It looks like the Sahara or something,
It does look like the Sahara. It's an aerial view of Maiden Castle Iron Age hill fort in Dorchester on Monday. Most of Britain is now in drought, affecting around 45 million people. What does that actually mean, we're in drought? Because I know that sounds a bit thick, but I don't quite understand what that means when we can still turn on our taps and there's still... So it's a scientific level.
I don't either. Look, the thing I would say about this is scary is I was talking to some friends who live over sort of Sydenham way, and they were walking sort of... this was a week ago last Monday, and they were walking their dog, and they sort of came to this slight clearing, and it was about 8:30, 9 o'clock at night, and they sort of realised they'd basically scared off somebody who was essentially setting a fire. As in, like, there was piled up debris, and then there was sort of bits going off of it to make sure... And obviously they called the police straight away, and, you know, nothing had been set, but they'd literally come across a clearing, seen a couple of people running away, they obviously shouted after them, and as I say, looked and saw what they'd been doing and phoned the services straight away. But what is the matter with people? You know, everywhere is tinder dry. We've had France, Spain, Greece literally on fire for about 2 or 3 weeks, and we've got, you know, some people in South East London who think it'll be a bit of a laugh. I mean, was it kids?
Absolutely.
As I say, my friends were just, like, so shocked. And then, on the other hand, well, thank God we were walking Daisy the dog at...
But also what I don't understand
8:30 at night.
is in parks and things, people are still using those individual tinfoil barbecues.
Yeah.
That's an accident waiting
Fire was called out to Clapham Common at least half a dozen times over the weekend.
Because of these barbecues?
Yes, because of the little tray.
Stupid. I mean, people are just thick. That's the problem with it. So yeah, I'm not even sure. I'd like to know what it means by in drought. I mean, I know that's a lack of water. I'm not dumb, but the scientific level for that, because people are not feeling like we're in drought because we can still turn the tap on.
Well, okay, unless you're, you know, East Alex where I am, but occasionally you do turn the tap on and no water does come out. Gosh, I really must stop my rant against Thames Water.
No, don't ever stop your ranting against Thames Water. I hate them. So, OK, the iPaper also saying 45 million people in the UK are now living in drought. 3/4 of England and all of Wales now officially in drought, with a 36 Celsius forecast this week. That's Thursday this week. And I've got to go into town.
Are you sure about that?
I've got to go into town. I've got an appointment I have to go to.
Is it an appointment between one very air-conditioned place to the next very air-conditioned
Well, if I
place?
drive, one of them will be air-conditioned.
Yes.
But I don't think the other place is air-conditioned.
Okay.
Yeah. 27 million people living under water use restrictions. The 120 firefighters tried to stop the New Forest wildfire, the size of 140 football pitches, from spreading. And then it mentions that golden hello for water boss.
Crazy. And then, but what this actually doesn't mention is also the sort of, again, terrible impact on the NHS and the fact that all this, you know, heat has on older people and you know, the sort of very young as well. And there's been a number of sort of what are called kind of excess deaths this year that you wouldn't normally expect to see. We've had these 4, now 5 kind of heat waves. So there is, you know, there is a real human...
There really is,
cost.
But I just wish people had stopped being such idiots. I mean, The Guardian as well, saying firefighters raise alarm over a surge in unprecedented summer blazes. You know, people, even smokers, just chucking a fag down. Just be thoughtful, just think about it. I mean, there's just such a lack of engagement and care.
Well, it's not even care, it's basic thought.
It's just total narcissism.
Have you also
People
noticed, well, since you've mentioned you have to go into town, have you noticed how horrible everywhere smells?
Yes.
Because
Horrible.
there's just been no rain to clear anything away, and just the whole of central London just
stinks.
It has a
it has a whiff about it. But it's the other day when there was a tiny little bit of rain.
For like 3 minutes.
But did you smell the
flash.
Petrie core?
Yeah.
It was really. I love that smell, and it was really strong. I think because it had been so dry for so long, it was a real whiff. I love that it's called Petrie core.
Well, I'm just sort of hoping after this the horrible sort of 30. Like we could just do with a good good storm. A big thundery downpour.
Well, my bananas in my banana tree, one of them's gone yellow.
This is Britain, Petrie.
I know, but it's tiny. It's the size of my little finger.
It shouldn't be happening.
I know, but it has, and I was told it would never go yet. They would just be green, but the one of them
Are you
has
going
gone
to eat
yellow.
it?
Yes.
Yeah, OK.
I've got to.
Yes, no, you do.
It would probably taste disgusting, but I've got to eat it.
I think, yeah.
It's got to be done. But yeah, I looked up the other day and it was actually going yellow, proper banana colour. I thought, that's
frightening.
Not on. That really is not on. But yeah, it is. So these farmers need to start planting banana trees, maybe. That would be the future.
Oh, and then there's also... did you hear a shark? They think they spotted a shark off... was it Jersey? Literally heard this on the tea time.
Well, there's loads of sharks off Cornwall, aren't there?
No, but they've always been those.
Yeah.
They're just sort of basking, not...
Is this a great white?
No. So literally I heard on the tea time news a few hours ago that I think, somewhere just off Jersey, like it's a shark, like a proper sort of...
Well, I'm not surprised. They must be really confused.
Yeah, they don't know where they're going.
They don't know what they're up to. Pressure on banks over surveillance of reporters. The businessman and Reform UK donor Aaron Banks, at that Banks, is facing calls to lay out the extent of his surveillance of journalists, which has been described by an industry body as an attack on our democracy. The News Media Association, which represents regional and national media, raised concern after Banks appeared to admit at the weekend to hiring private investigators to spy on the Sunday Times journalist.
Yeah, that's crazy. And
I wish they'd spy on me, because I'd be so bored. They'd be so bored.
No, it could be like a double bluff on your part, though.
Yeah, they'd be like, does she go out? No. Does she do anything? No. That'd keep them busy, wouldn't it? Watching me do nothing. I think that's really sinister.
It is, because, I mean,
sinister.
when you've got a man with the amount of money that Aaron Banks does, deciding that he's not happy with you in a way...
Yeah.
And you're not only just doing your job, but also sort of
protected by
public
law.
service. And then you've got this guy, zero transparency. And in fact, that's the very thing you're investigating, where exactly all of this money going into an organisation he's tightly involved in. I mean, it's Stasi, sort of,
it really
men
is.
around the corner. What is that double click on my telephone?
Yeah.
Why are there so many
wide berth from somebody carrying an umbrella?
Yes, the classic. Why are there so many cigarette butts, by this car on the opposite side of the road? I see you and I have both had training in spycraft.
We have, definitely, or we've watched far too many programmes about it. Right, the Metro... it never rains, but it pours. 1 million Chinese forced to flee Typhoon Dolphin. That's a nice name for a typhoon. As Britain braces for yet another 36 centigrade heat wave. I mean, I think that dragging those two stories together is a bit of a reach.
It's a bit of they sort of meshed.
That's
sort of meshed something there. And I'm not quite sure it's sort of achieved.
No, I'm not sure it's working. Yeah. So that's the Metro. Daily Express, a Tory leader warns the PM Burnham over fresh hikes to pay for spending spree, rule out new taxes to prevent more hardship. Kemi Badenoch has warned of more hardship unless Andy Burnham rules out tax rises to fund his spending spree. Well, he's either got to do one of two things, borrow more or spend more.
Yeah.
Or tax more.
Tax more. I mean, so actually I would say of all the papers, this is a classic silly season story in the sense that it's sort of not new. It's not telling us anything we didn't know.
No.
It kind of is going to go to its core audience, and it does what it says on the tin.
Yeah.
So whilst I don't have Cliff Richard, I will take Tuesday's Daily Express as being a pretty good example of the genre.
Pretty good. It's very good. A nice picture of Sophie for some reason wearing a
panda. Sorry, goggles.
She can't see through that though. Why has that got a cover on?
I don't know.
Confused. I probably don't need to know. I probably can live my life quite happily without knowing. Quick break. We'll be back in a moment.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk and it's Petrie with you and with me, Amy Fisher, former Director of Comms for the Conservative Party. The Financial Times, China shipping line launches weekly passage as Arctic Ice Silk Road opens. I haven't really read into that, I have to be perfectly honest. Wall Street big names to join NVIDIA to build a $500 billion AI financing package. Nothing could possibly go wrong with that.
No, it's not at all a scary headline. I mean, literally, even sort of earlier on. I mean, look, I'm sure there are going to be some tech bros at other companies that will make an awful lot of money off any of this AI stuff. And unfortunately, with the AI, the genie is out the bottle. But look, even
it's not just out the bottle; it's causing
rampaging.
havoc.
Yes. Well, even on Monday there were stories around about how basically sort of Whitehall, and by Whitehall I don't just mean mainstream government departments. I mean the security services are, sort of kind of whispering like, what the hell? Like, we don't really understand this.
No.
We don't understand how it's going to be.
And Trump's taken all the guardrails off it.
All the guardrails, and it's all utterly terrifying. And the number of things that you sort of, I don't know, when you get sent a kind of funny or like an interesting video or something, the number of times, like, it will sort of then say, oh, this was AI generated, or I'll show it to a friend and a friend will be like, yeah, but Amy, that's
AI.
That's not like a real thing. And I'm like, what? And oh goodness, and when you get when you receive, I don't know, be it direct marketing or anything like that, and that I do, it's literally like, a bot wrote this.
Yeah.
Like, I can tell this is not a personal message from
Absolutely.
whomever. This is being written by a Because the one that really drives me nuts, that is quite well known as being a sort of chat GPT tell, is when it sort of, the sentence structure is, well, it's not really A, but it's actually B. And let me tell you why. And it's a very sort of classic setup to the argument they want to make. So now, even if anybody said that to me in real life, I'd just think,
AI. You're AI.
Stop with this sentence structure. But yes, as I say, I'm sure some people are making and will make, well, you know, it's 500 billion here.
Yeah, I mean, they're already talking about the AI bubble bursting, though, aren't they? There's already talk about
hopefully, but I don't see how
this is sustainable, because it's all jammed tomorrow. AI, the whole thing is a promise about how great it's going to be in the future, and at some point that future has to pay up, right?
Yeah.
So, and that's when bubbles burst. I mean, we've seen it before in the tech industry. It's all promises, and this is what it should be able to do. This is what we're hoping that it'll be able to achieve. It's got to pay out at some point, and if it doesn't, this is when, you know, you've got $500 billion going down the swan.
Well, you will remember the, you know, .com burst in 2001.
Yeah.
Where suddenly, like literally overnight, it all kind of
collapsed.
It all evaporated, and it was, you know, sort of
because that was the same problem. It was castles built on sand and jammed tomorrow, and promises that weren't upkept. So, I mean, the only thing I can see is you know, real issues with AI taking over the world. We're all doomed. We're all doomed.
And on that cheery note,
that jolly note, the Daily Star, Amazon is primed to buy Liverpool Football Club. Do you know what I thought when I saw this? That why can't these rich people, it was a different word I had in mind,
sure,
just leave things and let some people enjoy life.
What small pleasure they may
small pleasure they may get from watching Arsenal or Liverpool or whoever it is he's going to buy. Just stop trying to make money. You've got enough money. Just leave them alone.
I totally agree, but I sort of think in some kind of cosmic way there's absolutely unholy potential alliance between Amazon and Liverpool, which we know, I'm not actually singling out Liverpool here, but using it as sort of totemic of the football world as a whole. I mean, you know, just football, the beautiful game, we know is driven by corruption and fraud and money speaking, all the rest of it. So
and look at Infantino.
Infantino and all the dodginess that he's been up to. So, as I say, in some kind of allegorical world, this is just like a Milton's Seventh Circle of Hell, no?
Yeah.
The unholy alliance between potentially Amazon and one of the biggest football clubs in the world.
But do they have to just keep
buying
getting
everything
involved?
up, and it's all
British, and it's going to America again, and it's just like, I mean, the people at the Liverpool Football Club may be thrilled about this, thinking about all the extra money they're going to have to spend on players, but even that's capped, isn't it? Even they're not allowed to spend, you know, as much as Bezos has got. Just.
I mean, I thought the headline was a little bit laboured as well, because obviously, you know, the Liverpool song is "You'll Never Walk Alone." But on a lighter note, for something that we have, as the Daily Star likes to say, news with a wink, is on the left there we have, you know, Brad Pitt, and he's done some sort of interview somewhere, and his life was the pits, apparently, so sort of some slightly weak play on...
Smallest violin.
I know, and there's that too. And also, having spent most of my teenage years with a sort of poster of him from, you know, A River Runs Through It, or Legends of the Fall. No, he's not very nice, I don't think.
No, and most men are very fortunate in that they don't get worse.
Well, I think it's because he thinks he's still 40.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, Anyway, what a shame. I'm sorry that his life has been the pits. But
yes, it's, you know, hardship, and as you say...
Hardship, smallest ever violin playing. Now, Infantino, this is on the front page of the Telegraph, little thing, we were talking about football there. 3 of Infantino's vice presidents have begun talks to set up breakaway competitions in response to FIFA's president's failed plan to sell off a stake in the World Cup. He really seems to have overstepped, doesn't he? He didn't talk to anybody, probably Trump, but he didn't talk to anybody of any consequence. He runs it like an authoritarian president.
A dictatorship.
Yeah, it's a dictatorship. Yeah. And he just came up with this idea, but they want they want players to have meaningful opportunities now to compete in the event of a World Cup boycott, which is still being threatened by UEFA. So they're basically, it's CONCACAF, which represents North Central America and the Caribbean football, are thinking of setting up their own version, the Asian Football Confederation as well, because they don't trust Infantino.
Yeah.
I mean, he's got to go, right?
But this is a guy...
But he won't, he'll cling on.
But this is a guy who is clearly very powerful.
Yeah.
But I'd not heard of him until a month ago.
Well,
this is what I mean
by
by
the World Cup.
Yeah, exactly. It was sometimes out of nowhere, these incredibly powerful people sort of, you know, cross your periphery vision, and then suddenly they're front and centre and doing literally sort of quite groundbreaking but seismic things in a very bad way. But he doesn't seem like a nice chap.
No, and he's totally fed by his own ego. And there were stories at the weekend, weren't there, as well, about one body that he worked for having to pay off
six figures
to a lover that he denied and they denied. But still, I think the press are going to keep going after Infantino, but he'll cling on. He's another Trump, isn't he? It's the whole thing.
He's got the money, he's got the ego.
Yeah, he loves being bowed down to by foreign dignitaries. They all, because he runs FIFA and they've got lots of money. And he loves it. You can just see him.
It's like when he made one or two of these comments about, oh, of course, you know, of course Trump may have my number. It's like, oh, you're just getting off on that. The idea that sort of, oh, you reach for your flip-top silver Motorola and, oh, look, it's Donald calling.
It's Donald,
like, you actually love it, don't you? Don.
Yeah, ridiculous. I'll never forgive him for that Peace Prize that he gave. Anyway, so that was the stupid thing. Amy, thank you very much indeed for coming in. Amy Fish there, former Director of Comms for the Conservative Party. Thank you for going through the papers with me.
Pleasure.
Right, so I'm just going to run through some of the main front pages here. The Daily Mail, the day small boats crisis became a big boats crisis. That's on most of the front pages. No limit to migrant mega dinghies. That's photographs. Most of the papers carrying a photograph of that mega dinghy. And the other big story, really, on the front pages is the pickle that Andy Burnham, our new Prime Minister, has got himself into over the early release system, because Andy Burnham wants to prevent early release, but he's being told that it is unlikely that he'll be able to do that. Andy Burnham was told his Justice Secretary to draw up plans to prevent the early release of PC Andrew Harper's killers and present them to Parliament amid a mounting backlash from the victim's family and the police. So that is one of the other big stories on the front pages, but most of them carrying this mega dinghy and also discussing there Britain faces the worst food security crisis in a decade as the drought spreads. Kemi Badenoch says that Andy Burnham must rule out new taxes to prevent more hardship, and other papers looking at the second or third, or I think it's the fifth heat wave to hit Britain in the last few weeks. I'm sure that Jeremy Carl will be covering those stories for you in the breakfast show on Talk here. But yeah, those are the papers. Stay where you are for now, because coming up we're going to be talking about the prison reform that Reform wants to bring in.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, and a very good morning to you. It is Petrie here with you for the next hour, and of course this is the Talkback Hour, so I'd like you to do exactly that. And I want to talk to you about some of the prison reforms that Nigel Farage was talking about today. Another big announcement by Mr Farage, one of them being that all 10,000 of our foreign incarcerated prisoners, he says he'd like to send to prisons such as in El Salvador or Kosovo, so to rent prison spaces really from foreign countries and deport all of those foreign prisoners to either the country of their origin from day one and of their prison sentences, or if the country of origin says no to that, then them being sent to places like El Salvador. So that's one of his ideas. The other idea that he came up with was a Nightingale prison. If you remember, during COVID, there were Nightingale hospitals built that clearly are a different thing to prisons, and they couldn't get the staff to run them, basically. So we spent millions on these Nightingale hospitals that were never used, because they couldn't be used, and doctors wouldn't send patients there because there was no understanding that they'd be treated well enough or as well as they were treated in hospitals, so doctors wouldn't send their patients there anyway. So those are the two proposals. The Nightingale prisons, I just, again, I can't think who would staff them. I can't think what kind of prisoner that they would put in there, I don't know how that would even work. And as usual, and it's not just from reform, we've had this from Andy Burnham as well, that we just get this broad brush, these ideas that are thrown out there. Yeah, we're going to make it, we're going to do a nationwide social care package, but there's no detail to it. So there's no detail either to these plans by Nigel Farage, who seems to think that coming out of the ECHR will give him carte blanche to do what he likes in terms of sending people to foreign countries, although many experts in this field are suggesting that actually it's going to take years to come up with the places, to negotiate deals, sort out who gets sent away, flights, all of those things. It's going to take years. This is not a quick fix. In fact, it would be quicker to build more prisons. Those are the plans. The other thing that Nigel Farage said, which I found interesting in his speech today, was that he felt that there were certain types of prisoners, certain types of crimes that were pretty much unforgivable by society, and that there was no hope of rehabilitation for those prisoners. So I just wanted to know from you whether you do think that is the case, that there are certain crimes that should never be forgiven and certain prisoners that should never be forgiven either. I mean, we already have whole life sentences, right, for prisoners that we believe should never see the light of day, that have so harmed society that they will never be released. But do you think that should go for more prisoners or for more types of crime? Do give me a call, 0344 499 1000. Those calls are charged at the national rate, but we do call you back. And text the word talk and your message to 87222. Well, to discuss this further, I'm absolutely delighted to say, although it's a little bit shocking to have somebody in the studio, I have with me Jazz Singh, who's a Global Freedom Fellow and Global Freedom Consultant with Incarceration Nations Network, and he's also the founder of his own charity, that is Beyond the Sentence, CIC. First of all, Jazz, that question of some people cannot be rehabilitated, and I know that that's the world that you are in trying to seek rehabilitation for prisoners and society to rehabilitate its attitude towards ex-convicts. Do you agree with him?
No, not at all. I have the mindset that there's a saying in life that a leopard can't change its spots. I've yet to meet a leopard, and I don't think leopards can change their spots, but I do believe that every leopard can change its mind. And I think as a human being, we all have the capacity to change our thinking and our outlook and to be rehabilitated.
Even those people who are the worst offenders, rapists, paedophiles, people, murderers, those people as well, you believe can be rehabilitated?
Absolutely, 100%. Anybody can be rehabilitated if they want to. There's a huge stance, and it goes back to Tony Blair's era in government, that we're going to be tough on crime and the causes of crime, but we're not looking upstream at what actually percolates that sort of criminal mindset. You know, what conditions are people born into? My daughter wrote me a letter at Christmas, and it starts like this, is that all of us are born into something, and we have no agency or control of what we're born into. And when we look at our prison population, we know what postcodes feed our prisons, we know what pipelines from the care system or school exclusion feeds our prisons. So we need to look at those causes and say, actually, why don't we try and stop people going into prison rather than looking at these long sentences and saying people can't rehabilitate. Every human can change their mind.
When you look at as you were saying, the stream of we know largely where criminals come from, as you said. Is it just too difficult to prevent people becoming criminal in the first place? You've got a lot of people in prison at the moment who have got mental health issues. You've got a lot of people in prison at the moment who've got drugs issues, and if they didn't have them when they went in, they certainly will have them by the time they come out. So how do we build a consensus and a world where care is taken to stop these from happening in the first place? Because a lot of people say, I had a bad childhood, I had a bad upbringing, I didn't become a criminal. So there are people who are born into poverty, there are people who are born into bad families, there are people born into violent families. They don't then turn out to be criminal, and they will say, there is a choice, and the bad people chose to be bad, I chose not to be.
It depends which way you look at it, and that's perspective. Some people may commit a crime but never be caught. And they may come from privilege, they may come from poverty. It swings both ways. But there is a general consensus that those that are school excluded seem to be labelled as actually your trouble. So they almost start getting into that psyche that you're a problem person. So they start growing into that character or that caricature that the world is putting onto them. When we look at those that are in the care experience or care experience children, they almost seem to be abandoned by their families, society, and again, they're othered, and they're very vulnerable. So they're susceptible to be groomed. Those that have mental health challenges, we don't look upstream and actually start thinking, what can we do to protect them at that early embryonic stage rather than letting them drift in their own haze in life towards crime.
But how do we do that when there are, apparently a never-ending stream of people getting into the justice system and ending up in prison? How do we... I mean, I guess it's fairly easy to spot somebody who might end up in that place, but we don't have the money or the resources to, wrap a blanket around everybody and make sure they don't end up in the prison system.
I would challenge that we don't have the money, because the prison system costs a lot of money.
Yeah.
And I'll give you an example. Just as an average, a prison place costs roughly £55,000 to £60,000 on average. That's the same...
A year?
A year. That's the same price as sending somebody to Eton.
I think I'd rather go to prison.
Well, the food's certainly better at Eton. But if we look into the young offenders in sort of estate, the young offenders institutions, the cost is around £232,000.
Wow.
Because
why?
Of all of the additional support services that they need, the therapeutic support, the care they need, the number of staff they need to manage them. When you get further into the estate, the price evens out a little bit, but that's the cost. Now, we could certainly put that cost towards early intervention, so we can divert and deflect people away from going into that criminal sort of jurisdiction. And to do that is, I'll give you an example. I went to school in East London. If you got into a scrap, what tended to happen is the headmaster would bring you in front of his office, and we'd have what we call community justice. He would tell you that you were wrong and you were wrong, and at some point you'd shake hands and you'd both walk away. And the police were never involved. Today, the first thing the school do is call the police. So we're getting children already associated with being handcuffed, being taken to a police cell, to be interviewed. So they're already getting into that energy field, that quantum physics of actually, why is this happening to me? So that, and we're injecting trauma. And the point you made about trauma is trauma. A traumatic event can be traumatic to any individual. And I use the example of if you did a privilege walk and you said whose parents have separated when you were a child. That could affect the richest person in the Grosvenor estate or somebody that's on a council estate. That's traumatic to the child that their parents have separated. So when we look at trauma, it's the legacy effect. How do we internalise that trauma?
But is trauma an excuse to become criminal? I mean, there seems to be, there'll be people listening who might think, oh, you know, you're a tree hugger and it's woke, that actually, you know, people do bad things for selfish reasons and it doesn't matter what their background was like. And to a degree, that there will be, my parents were divorced when I was 4, my second set of parents divorced when I was 13, the perfect, you know, timings. And I'm so uncriminal, it's frightening. But it is, people say, well, trauma isn't an excuse. It may be a reason, but it's not an excuse. How would you argue that?
Well, I mean, you said it yourself, it's a reason. It's not, an excuse is much more feeble than a reason. A reason is much more robust and resilient. So we need to be looking at that cause and thinking, if somebody's parents...
But I could have blamed my childhood on if I had become criminal, right?
I'm not saying that you can't take personal accountability. Part of rehabilitation is taking personal accountability. I spent 3 years of my own life in prison, incarcerated, when I attempted suicide and it went horribly wrong, and I was involved in a tragic fatal car crash.
Oh, wow.
So I ended up in prison. That's where I spent 3 years of my life.
That wasn't the right place to be, surely, for attempted suicide.
No, but that was the punishment, because at the end of the day, I did take somebody's life.
Right.
So, you know, I have to weigh that, and that's a karmic debt that I carry in every day of my life when I wake up. But because I went in at a much later stage, at 47, I had that emotional intelligence to handle prison differently. And when we talk about looking at young people, but also anybody that goes into that criminal mindset, we need to start working on rehabilitation from day one. Not let people warehouse, because what people are talking about is sending people to El Salvador. That's where you've got 1,000 people literally in like an Amazon warehouse on 4 bunk beds. There's no rehabilitation. They're not allowed to speak there. They're not allowed to. They're literally meek. So where's the rehabilitation? We're not making them safer to be in society when they get released. We need to work on what does...
But are we responsible for rehabilitating foreign criminals?
If they commit crime here, and it's your definition of foreign.
Yeah,
because
that's very true.
It's quite dangerous to think, you know, my parents are from South Asia, from India, and there could be a point where people say, actually, you know, I have to tick on a diversity form that I'm British Indian. And I've always questioned that, thinking to myself, I was born in Whitechapel, my children were born in Whitechapel down the road. At what point do they become just British?
Yeah.
Again, we segment people. We say, actually, you go into that pot puree, you go into that pot puree, and again, that's a dangerous thing to do. If somebody commits a crime in the UK, we should rehabilitate them in the UK. Not send them off to Rwanda, El Salvador, or somewhere in Central Europe. We should be dealing with...
What about sending them back to their own countries?
Well, again, to me, that's a Home Office and a visa issue rather than a foreign national issue. You know, we do extradition treaties with people across the world, and depending on when they arrived, how long they've been here. I was in prison with somebody, I won't mention their name. They spent 20 years in the UK, they were from Albania, originally 20 years running a business, and then the day that he was meant to get released, he got taken to a foreign national prison, and they tried to deport him until he proved that his children were born here, his whole life was here. So it's a very dangerous game to play, and it reminds me a bit of the energy of in the USA, where we've got people on different sides of the fence saying, actually, I belong on the other side of the fence with my children. Yeah,
yeah. I mean, what's happening in the US, I can't help but thinking that's where Nigel Farage is getting quite a few of his ideas.
Well, just on that, it's proven in America. We've had mass incarceration in America for 50 years now. It has no correlation to the crime wave. The crime wave does this, it fluctuates, it peaks and troughs. But the mass incarceration, the sentence inflation, is skyrocketing. What we're doing is, it's called the 13th Amendment in the US Constitution, all men and women are free of slavery unless they commit a criminal act. We're reintroducing an invisible slavery into the world.
I was talking about this the other day, actually, because the number I was talking about the tariffs that that Trump has recently attached to forced labour laws to, and yet the American prison system is the biggest forced labour and active slavery, I think, in the world at the moment. I mean, it's certainly huge.
Petrie, on that, I'm an ex-city guy, so when I was in prison, I used to, a canteen was the weekly shop. And obviously you've got plenty of time to analyse things in a different way, and I would be piling up all of my products and go, so Unilever make all of these products, so-and-so make all of the, DHL have the contract, etc., etc., etc. And you could see big business benefiting from people in prison.
Yeah, absolutely. And certainly in America, I know that is very much the case, that they work for pennies on the dollar, and working for a lot of big companies that benefit from that labour.
I'll give you an example, and I think it's really important that we do balance this with, it's a work opportunity, and this is part of rehabilitation, is getting people. I used to work in a call centre where I would ring people up and say, would you like to change your energy provider?
Wait, this is while you were in prison?
While I was in prison. I won't mention the name of the energy providers, but I used to ring people up, and I was the first point. And if you said yes, it would be a hotkey that would then go to the energy provider to take care of whatever they wanted to do. But we were the initial outreach. Now, I think that was a really good thing to do because it got people speaking to the public, it was a trusted role.
Confidence building.
Absolutely. Yeah. And these are the building blocks. If we want safer streets and a safer society, what we need to do is to tell people that you can do something. And I'll give you an example. I managed to get to open prison despite the pandemic. And it was during open prison I was working at No. 1 Poultry opposite the Ned here in London.
Yeah,
and I was selling IT courses. And then some of the lads says, can you get us a job? I said, well, I'll try. So I tried to get them a job, and we got 3 other lads to come in and sell IT courses with me. None of them had worked in an office before. They sold £92,000 worth of IT courses in August 21 after some training. And I bumped into one of the chaps today, and we were talking about it. We were reciting our time there. And he says, because of that moment, I believe that I can build my own version of Claude, because I have that belief now. Now, he went in his care experience, I won't mention his name, his care experience, not got a course certificate. He's just finished his first year of his AI degree, and he got 74% in his first year.
Wow.
And he's now rebuilding his life.
So what is the main driver, you would say, for the recidivism rate that we've got, and the way that prisoners are treated in this country? Do you think that as a society we need to be more forgiving? It's difficult to forgive, isn't it? Particularly if you've been a victim, but...
Well, there's 2 points there. Firstly, I do believe society needs to rehabilitate its belief structure on what a returning citizen, because I don't use the word ex-offender or ex-convict, I use the word returning citizen. And the reason I use that is that I don't introduce myself as the ex-child, but I was once an ex-child. I used to smoke, I used to be the ex-smoker. So some labels we can't tear off with Velcro. So we want to humanise the language. This is a human returning. I don't use the word prisoners, I say they're humans in a prison. A lot of people are in a prison outside of the walls of Pentonville and Wormwood Scrubs and Wandsworth, in their own thinking, in toxic relationships, substance misuse. All of these things happen outside. But I think the deepest element is that forgiveness is not an external event. Oh, I'm forgiving this person for what they did. Forgiveness is an internal event where you actually move over that threshold and say, actually, I'm not going to carry this anymore. But you use the word victim. If the whole point of justice is to honour the victim, which it should be, that should be the central tenet to justice, is we honour and protect the victim. But at some point, once we've done that and discharged that and furnished that to the victim, to their family and their community, the spotlight and reference must move to the perpetrator so that we can start rehabilitating them. Because at some point, they will, in most cases, apart from those whole of life tariff that you mentioned, they will return into society. And who do we want to come back? Somebody that spent 30 years warehoused away with no new thinking skills, etc. Because if they create a second victim, because they haven't been rehabilitated properly, we've never honoured the first victim.
I mean, I completely agree with that, but there are some people who think that the perpetrators of crime already get a lot of attention, where the victim of crime sadly doesn't. You know, after let's say a rape case that we've seen recently with these young girls, they were sort of abandoned after the court case, and the lads were getting, you know, support and help and restructuring and re-educating and all of those things. That balance feels off as well.
100%. I agree with you there. 100%. There has to be victim awareness and more work done to support victims, and not just the sort of primary victim, but their community as well. You know, how does it affect their
But also for as long as they need it. Some of these girls are scarred for life. Right?
100%. And those wounds have to be healed. Yeah, and that's work that society needs to do, and all of the support services that are available. And it's very difficult for people to speak about some things that's inner turmoil, but we have to work on that side too. And there has to be focus there. And, you know, until we get that balance right, and it is a tricky balance, but we must honour the victim. That has to be the premise. The first hurdle is we've got to honour the victim. And
yet that doesn't seem to happen.
I mean, it's similar to when we look at rehabilitation for the offender. You know, although I was in prison during COVID, I've gone back into prison on more than 90 occasions since my release to talk in prisons, so I'm very contemporary in my thinking.
Yeah.
We still run a COVID regime pretty much in most prisons, where people are being warehoused for up to 23 hours a day. There's very little support services that's done in prisons to rehabilitate people and change their thinking, because that, to me, is the best remedy to that victim. So actually, my suffering wasn't in vain. That this person has changed, and somebody else won't feel what my wounds are, my open wounds are. But we have to heal those wounds as well.
There's also an issue, isn't there, with the release of prisoners. I'm not talking about the early release of prisoners, but when prisoners have served their time, that they are just, that's it, bye then, see ya. And there doesn't seem to be any, you know, apart from probation, which isn't really a service to help the prisoner in that way, that they're just abandoned. It's hardly surprising they go back to a world of criminality, to what they know.
Well, the biggest barrier to reducing reoffending is employment and housing.
Yeah.
And I don't mean free housing. I mean somebody having a job, paying rent to the local council or privately. And this is where that word ex-offender comes up, because you have to tick a box. Have you committed a crime? Have you served a custodial sentence? And you say yes. And it happened to me when I came out of prison. I've spent 2 decades in finance across the river here, and I was ticking boxes. And from being at director level for the last 15 years, I couldn't get a job as a caseworker. And I'm not being ageist, but I was being interviewed by some people, and I said, I've got T-shirts older than you, who I genuinely have. But as soon as I disclosed that I'd been in prison, you could see their colour change.
Yeah.
And all of their stigma and their biases popped up, and they said, well, you're probably a threat to my lunchbox or something. So people already othered you. They don't look at who you are, they look at who you were. If you Google me and you see who I am, it says, you know, West London's most notorious criminals banged up, and there's a picture of me in the corner, and I'm from East London.
Yeah.
And that was my first index offence. But that's what society does. They Google you, and to me, Google's like a toilet wall. Anybody can write anything about anybody.
Yeah, sure.
It's about finding who that person is today, not who they were.
And do you think that people have the patience for that?
I think it's a question of humanity. Do you have the humanity for that rather than the patience for that?
We're also risk adverse now, aren't we?
Well,
in everything.
If we're risk averse, and I use the analogy that if you want safer streets, you want to be on the right side of fixing the problem, not pointing at the problem. I do work in prisons where there are men that have sexual offences. I have 2 daughters. I get a lot of flack for working in those prisons. And I said, well, actually, firstly, they have the lowest reoffending rate. Secondly, people say, well, you know, I like to work with the military vets. Yeah? And I said, well, did you know disproportionately they're overrepresented in sexual prisons? And people don't know that data. That data lake isn't readily available. But I want my daughters to walk in safer streets.
And so by going to these rapists, you're making the streets safer?
Telling them. Generally, you don't meet the predatory rapists. You'll meet the people that have had a sexual offence on a much lighter note. Still a sexual offence, still sexual harm was done. There is a victim out there. But you want to change their thinking before they get released. You don't want to be working when they're in probation. Probation are under the pump. We've seen the recall rates spike up.
Yeah,
because
huge.
probation. Well, I think it's one-on-one. One gets released, one gets recalled.
Yeah.
And when I walk into prisons now and I ask at the gate, I ask them one question: what's your recall and remand rate? That tells me how angry the prison is.
So, if you could change one thing, if you could give advice to a government in power, whichever one, what would it be?
I would say to them very bluntly is we need to be looking at not the causes of crime, but what are those embryonic seeds at the very beginning of the chain, but equally, what are we discharging from our prisons? Are we discharging people that are rehabilitated, that are able to rehabilitate back into society safely, rather than keeping people incapacitated for 20, 30 years and then releasing them exactly how they came in? With
the same problems, or even worse. Jazz, I could talk to you all night. Thank you very much indeed for joining me. Jazz Singh, Global Freedom Fellow and Global Freedom Consultant with Incarceration Nations Network and founder of Beyond the Sentence CIC. Quick break, back in a moment.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk and it's Petrie here with you, and this is your chance to talk back. We have been talking about prisons and the situation that Andy Burnham's got himself into with the early release scheme and the disaster that is turning out to be. But also talking about reforms plans to build Nightingale prisons and for 12,000 prison spaces and also to deport foreign prisoners back to their country of origin, or indeed, if that is refused, to places like El Salvador or Kosovo. So those are the reform plans at the moment. And also Nigel Farage said that there are certain prisoners who cannot be reformed, that cannot be rehabilitated. Jazz there said that that isn't true, that he believes that anybody can be rehabilitated. So I'm wondering where you stand with that as well. Give me a call, 0344 499 1000. Right, back straight to your calls now. Michelle has called from Birmingham. Michelle, a very good morning to you.
Hello.
Hello, how are you?
I'm okay. I love your voice so much. I've spoke to you a couple of times. You know who I am, don't you?
Yes, I do. Yeah, thank you. You're always very nice about my voice.
I just find you so soothing. So I think I've spoke to you before about against violence against women and everything. So now I'm going to speak to you from a different thing. The early release scheme. So I've had I think I've had 2 bottles of wine.
Oh no.
Right, okay. So my eldest son, he turns 26 on 22nd of August.
Right.
He has actually been in prison since he was 16.
Wow.
So, so the nation can, you can all, I'll tell you now, he was sent to prison. It was for, when it happened, I was so shocked, and I ended up having a mental breakdown. That's why I'm a bit crazy. Okay?
Right. Okay.
And it was for sexual assault. There was 2 counts of sexual assault. But he was given, I didn't kind of understood it when we was in the court, and the judge said, I'm giving you an extended sentence. I didn't understand what was going on.
So that's an extended detention?
Yeah.
Sentence?
Yeah.
Okay. So, I don't quite know what that means. So
right,
basically,
so
he's given a tariff.
No, I know. No. So if you're sentenced for murder,
right,
you're given a tariff.
Right.
So if you're sentenced to murder, not a whole life order. So if you're sentenced to murder, you're given a tariff. So even though you can apply for parole after that. So, you know, when they sentence people to murder and they say 25 years,
yeah.
After 25 years, you can apply for parole. They may not give it to you, but if they do give it to you, you're on license for the rest of your life.
Right, okay.
Right, so the EDS sentence, which it's only just been recently, because my son came up for parole, and they refused it. Now, and he was like, Mum, you've got to understand. So, you know the IPP sentences?
Yes. Yeah, those are the ones. There's a young man in there for nicking a phone, isn't there, for over a decade? Yeah.
Yeah, but you've got people, and IPP would literally, it could have been like a public nuisance, but they replaced, because they said that sentence was inhumane, because the people that are on IPP, you've got people that are in there for, I don't know, as much as people say like shoplifting, but you have actually got people in prison they've been in prison for years.
And they're that's an indeterminate sentence, yeah. Isn't it? So that is determined by behaviour in the prison system.
It's the same as murder. The IPP is basically the same as being sentenced to murder. So if you know, what's his name? And he's got like the bold head. You know Charles Bronson? It's like that. It's like if you've locked somebody up for so many years, let's say they've stolen, I don't know, they've stolen something, and then you've locked them up and you've kept them in that system. And then
but why are they chosen? Why is an IPP chosen or an EDS chosen?
What do you
What's
mean?
the justification for it? So
because they got rid of IPP because they said it was inhumane. You can't
put somebody in an indeterminate prison sentence.
You could sentence them for any crime. So you could sentence somebody for shoplifting and give them an IPP. So you could say, I'm sentencing you to 2 years in prison, but it's under an IPP. So you're not actually serving 2 years or at the half point. I know they've changed all the way, but basically at that 12-month period, those people could go and sit in front of the parole board and they could say, well, we think you're still a nuisance. I don't know, you've been in trouble in prison, you've done something, so we're not going to release you. So you're going to sit the parole board now again in 2 years' time, which has took that sentence now from being a 2-year sentence to a 4-year sentence, and then you go in front of the parole board and you've got in trouble again, and so on and so forth, and then the parole board goes, oh, well, no, we're going to defer that, you're going to sit the parole board again, and before you know it, you've got somebody sitting in prison. So and I'm not saying it's stupid, I'm not saying what they did wasn't wrong, but you've got somebody that has done something that is really a low-level crime,
that
is still in prison 10, 15, 20
Yeah, it's a
years
disproportionate.
later.
So with the EDS, what was your son told when he was first?
So what happened with my
Sentence.
son is, I'm going to be so honest with you, because when this happened with my son, like I said to you, I had a nervous breakdown and everything. And so my son was 16, and the barrister that was representing my son was representing a very high-profile case. It was in the East Midlands. I'm not going to say what the case was. And the evening before my son was going to be sentenced, the solicitor rang and said, look, we've gone to the judging chambers. They won't release him. So basically, my son's barrister, he dealt with people under the age of 18 that was on serious cases. And he was involved in a case. And the judge, it was a murder case he was involved in, would not basically halt the proceedings. He wouldn't release him from them proceedings to come and represent my son. And I always remember the morning, we'd had the phone call, the morning we got to the court, and the barrister, we got into the court, and she literally went into this room. It's not in that way. She was a female barrister, and I don't mean it in that way, but she dropped down like she had these massive files, and she said, I've got an hour to get through these. I don't know what I'm going to do.
Yeah, that doesn't seem very fair.
No, it didn't. But I know my son had to be punished for what he did.
But how long was his original sentence?
No, he was, so basically when we went into court, the judge said, and he kept saying to his barrister, I need you, so they've got some culpability, so they put things into a table, which is what a lot of people don't understand with certain crimes. They will put things into a table, so they will say, are you in this category? Are you in that category? Where is your culpability? Where is this? The threat to the public, the threat to this. And the judge was saying to her, you need to, and he just went out and he come back. So basically he said to my son, I know you're only 16 years of age, you've only just literally turned 16, but he said, if I looked at you, because he's like kind of bigger built, I wouldn't look at you, because it was a sexual offence, I would not look at you and look at you and think that you was like a young person, a child.
Yeah.
I would look at you and see you as an adult. So I am going to, on those grounds, I am going to say the victims would look at you and think you're an adult. I have got to take off the fact that you pleaded guilty. I've got to take off the fact of your age. But what the judge did was, and I will never take away from the victims, and I won't, and I'm going to say this, Petrie, I won't take that away. But what the judge did, when we come out of the court, the solicitor did say the judge was very smart, because what he did was, he said, I want to sentence you to 14 years in prison, but I can't do that because of your age. So I'm going to sentence you to 9 years in prison, but I'm going to give you an EDS sentence, which made it a 14-year prison sentence, but I'm also going to extend your license for another 5 years. So anyway, so we're here. This is where we are. This is where we are as a family. He's like, we've been through it. I've had a breakdown. We've all fell out as a family. And we're here. And then you've got now this early release scheme. So we've been speaking about it because he's not eligible for it because he's on an EDS sentence.
Wow.
And anybody that's on an IPP sentence, they're not eligible for it regardless of their offence. So my son said to me, so he's in HMP Oakwood, which is a private run prison. I just listened to the guy you was talking about when he's saying about them doing work. So my son goes to a workshop and he does things, for your windows. he fixed components in for new windows and everything. Yeah, and he's paid, I think he's paid like 74 pence a day. But that, it's not a problem, it's okay. But then he said to me...
Do you think he could come out and be a worthwhile member of society?
Yeah. He's got us, yeah. There's no reason. He was released on parole and he came out. The nation listens to this. He came out to his girlfriend that's been with him since before this happened. They weren't getting along. Something happened. There was an argument. The police come. He's never actually been shot. There was an argument and they basically recalled him. This was 17 months ago. He's been sat in prison for an argument with his girlfriend where even she is like, why is he there? Like, that's really interesting, Michelle, because I've been learning a lot about these recall problems, and there's a lot of people are saying that the prisoners are recalled for absolutely no real reason now, and that is that's adding to the issue. Can be recalled for just so part of his license conditions is, so when they're released, and I need the whole of the country to hear this, so when somebody's released, not just my son, when they're released, under certain, especially under parole conditions, they've got to have a residential address. So they will place them, the probation service will place them, they're called CAS properties, so they can be a CAS 1, CAS 2, or a CAS 3. And they are run by the Ministry of Justice. They don't cost, there's no rent for them, but they will only put them there for so many days. It's not so many weeks. They will say, you can be in that property. After that, you need to find somewhere to live. So let's say if you've got somebody that's got they've got nothing, they can't find somewhere else to live, the probation service will then, by law, it's not just the probation service, it's the Ministry of Justice will say, we're recalling you because you've got nowhere to live.
Wow. Wow. I mean, look, Michelle, I wish I could talk to you for longer, my darling, but I've really got to go because I've missed 2 breaks now. But...
Oh, no, because I want to tell you about this guy. Can you stay on the phone to me?
Well, let me take a break and I'll come back to you in just a moment. So I've got to take that break. Back in a sec.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk, and it is Petrie here with you. Michelle's still on the line now. Michelle, thank you for waiting.
Hello.
Right, what was it you wanted to tell me?
Right, okay, so part of this early release scheme is that let me turn this down, 1 second. So they can't be released if they're on an IPP or an EDS sentence, regardless of the offence. So you could have somebody on either of these sentences that's not committed rape or murder. They can't be released. So my son, and I was saying to him, well, why can't you apply for it? And he was like, because his offence is a sexual assault. And he was like, well, I'm not eligible for it. And he said, Mum, you know, there's a guy in here with us. And in the prison my son's in, and he told me his name, and I was like, oh, I'm not going to. And he said to me, Google it. And I was like, I'm not going to Google it. And he told me what the guy had done. And I was like, no, I don't want to look at it. I don't kind of. And then I've looked at him. He's been sentenced to 24 years, but he was sentenced in, if I've got this right, I've looked at it. I don't know, can I say his name?
No, you can't. Sorry.
Right. So he was sentenced to 24 years. Basically, it was for paedophilia, but this guy, he was... makes me feel sick to say it. He was, you know, it was like videos, images.
Right.
But he had sent it. It wasn't just within the UK, it was global. And he'd made a lot of money of it, from it. And he is now not just eligible, he is being released under the early release scheme.
Yeah.
Because it's not classed as rape or murder. And then I look, and I'm not just saying this for my son. You look at the many of the cases. You know when you listen to PC Harper's mum, and I watched her on the news the other morning, and she said, "Well, how many beds?" And I sat there and I thought, you know, how many beds of the prisoners under the IPP, the prisoners under EDS. That are on there, they're not on there on like naughty charges. They're not on there on wrong charges. And I'm not saying this for my son because he is on there. He done wrong. But
so he's done. How many years has he done now?
10 years.
10 years, and his sentence was 14.
Pardon?
His sentence was 14 years.
He was sentenced to 9 years, but he got an EDS. So the judge said, I want to give you 14 years in prison, but because you're not an adult, I can't give you that. And because you pleaded guilty, but what I'm going to give you is 9 years in prison, EDS, which worked out at 14 years. When we come out of the court, the solicitor said, like, the judge has been very smart in the way he's done it. So basically, he sentenced him to 14 years in prison.
Yeah, because I've just looked up the EDS thing and the IPP, and they do seem to be a very strange way of sentencing, and probably applicable to some people, right? But
yeah.
But your son will have to be released at the 14-year point.
Yeah, he's got to. I said to him, because he broke down to me, and he was like, Mom, I can't take this no more. Like, my son has been, there has been points where, like, he's been beat up really bad. And he just said to me, there was something a few weeks ago, and he was like, Mom, I can't take this no more. And I said to him, do you know what? They can't keep you forever. And I felt awful for saying it. But I said to him, you know what? If you if you can do this, just do it. Just stay in prison until 2030. They can't keep you. They can't keep you.
No, they have to release him at the 14-year point because
And then there's no license restrictions. You can't because you can't find somewhere to live that they don't approve of because you can't there. And he broke down. He was just like, I can't do this no more. And he was literally just turned 16. I can tell you his case.
Yeah, because again, the judge wasn't able to give the EDS to anybody under the age of 18, but he gave it to your son. I mean, it feels like he was harshly treated because the EDS is for those people who continue to be a threat to society.
It was actually.
And at 16, I would.
It was his first offence. What happened wasn't nice. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not buttering it up.
Not defending him.
No, I'm not. It made me. I had a breakdown. It broke up my relationship with his stepdad.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. That would be.
We lost our home. Everything. Our jobs. Everything. I couldn't cope. But when I look at him now, and I just look at him, and when he says to me, "Mum, I can't do this," and he's in a unit, he's at HMP Oakwood, and he's on a unit where it's for vulnerable prisoners, but a lot of them, the offences they've committed, like I've just said to you, this guy, and he's just saying to me, I want to come home. And when I look at him, when I speak to him, he's still a 16-year-old.
Yeah, I get it.
Me.
I get it. Michelle, my heart breaks for you. It really does. And it does seem to be very unfair, doesn't it, the way some of these sentences, and it's at the whim of a judge. And that's the thing. We've always got to check up on these judges. Michelle, lovely to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed for calling and for sharing that. It's a big story. Thank you for taking the time. I just want to take one more call before the end of the programme. And Steve is on the line now from Swansea. Steve, good morning to you. You agreed with what Nigel Farage said about rehabilitation.
Hi, Petrie. Yeah, great to speak to you again. Basically, I mean, there are people who cannot be rehabilitated. That's an absolute fact. We know that through, prisoners, high-profile ones that we know of. The most prominent being Ian Huntley. The guy had no remorse for what he did ever, and it's funny because I've just written a book, and through my book I've had to research some of the most horrible monsters in history.
Right.
People that 100%. There's no remorse there.
But is that according to the person or the crime? So are we saying that
the person?
It's the person, right? Okay. Yeah. So it wouldn't ever be a case of saying that paedophiles can't be rehabilitated. It would be certain paedophiles.
Actually, there are certain crimes as well.
Okay.
So that kind of urge is always going to be there.
I tend to agree with that.
Psychologists,
I do tend to agree with that. But so what do we do? Do we say that all paedophiles will be locked up indefinitely?
Well, when it comes to human rights, it's difficult, isn't it? Because what you would like to do, you can't.
Yeah.
So I would like to say castration is.
Well, some of them do opt for the chemical castration, don't they? But all that does is take the desire away. It doesn't. Maybe that's enough.
The danger is still. The
danger is still there.
And do you lock them? Well, you can't. You can't lock them away forever. Because again, human rights are going to step in. That is through my book.
What's your book called?
A lot. It's called The Hunter Chronicles.
Right.
basically, I'll give you 2 lines from the blurb. From the cobble streets of Whitechapel to the ruins of Berlin, from the cold rooms of Bletchley Park to the dark highways of America, he carries one unbroken promise: no cruelty lasts forever, no tyrant owns the dark.
Wow.
It's historical fantasy. It's an immortal that goes around sorting out the wicked.
Don't we wish we could all do that, right?
Don't we just? Yeah.
So you do think there are people that are just wicked, that they are just not redeemable
Absolutely.
in any way, and they would be mentally, like psychopaths or.
Yeah. You look at Jack the Ripper from the 18.
They're still not sure who that was, are they?
No, and that's what I've done with the book. Is if it's a serial killer that's just disappeared, my guy's done it.
Ah.
Yeah. So but I had to research people who were like him.